I just saying you. It looks like you're growing the beard back. Yes.
Yeah, I might go with a goatee tomorrow. You never know. I had 4 days off, so it's yeah.
Greetings all.
Councillor Parkinson, how you doing there, buddy?
Sure.
I'm great. Great. Hope you all are too. Cynthia, all good?
Mm-hmm.
Doing better. Had a bit of an off weekend, but
Oh,
that's life.
Good evening, all.
good
Michael,
evening.
how you doing, Mike?
Very well, thanks.
Chair, the meeting is streaming when you're ready to begin the meeting.
Why, thank you. Okay, so it is 6:30. I think we're just missing one person, if I can count properly, but nonetheless, we will call the meeting to order, and I will do a quick roll call. Councillor Kobayashi,
I'm here.
Councillor Parkinson,
I'm here.
Councillor Day,
I'm here.
Councillor Baxter,
I am here.
Mayor Martin,
Present.
and Councillor Jansen.
Here.
Thank you. So I'd like to acknowledge with great respect and humility that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people. And we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. With that, I'll, under approval of the agenda, if there are no additions or concerns, I will consider that the agendas are approved as through unanimous consent. And I'm not seeing any hands or issues, so they are so approved. Adoption of the minutes, one set of minutes from March the 1st. If there are no errors or omissions or concerns, I'll consider them adopted through unanimous consent. And I'm not seeing any concerns there either. So we'll move on to item 4, public participation. I just want to remind, I understand we have 3 people that are registered to speak tonight. And I just want to remind folks that are speaking tonight that comments pertaining to the following matters that have been subject to a public hearing are prohibited from for discussion at this meeting. And those 4 items are Bylaw 1989, Cannabis Retail at 1905 Souk Road, Bylaw 1909, CD 31, 3554 Ryder Heshdall Way, Bylaw 1912, CD 32, 791 Drummond Way, and finally, Bylaw 1913, CD 33, 2350 Souk Road. I understand from staff that there are 3 people that have registered to speak tonight. I would propose, since there's only 3, unless there's an issue from committee that we extend the 2 minutes to 4 minutes, still within the 20-minute time frame. If there is no concerns with that, we will extend it to 4 minutes based on unanimous consent. And I'm not hearing any issues. Okay, so Amanda, please, if you'd let the first person in and introduce him, please.
Okay, so we do have someone online, Jeremy Bosio from Caspian Drive. Could you please unmute yourself and go ahead?
So Jeremy, welcome. So you've got 4 minutes. And I'll try to remember to give you a bit of a, hey, you've got 30 seconds left at the 3 minute and 30 second mark.
Well, thank you very much. I definitely will not need 4 minutes.
Love it.
My name is Jeremy Bosio. I am a new resident at 241 Caspian Drive inside of Royal Bay. My wife and I moved here from Victoria. We were living in Vancouver 2018, then Victoria, and now we've purchased our home here and love Colwood so far and the neighbors that we have made friends with, and it's a great community. I wanted to be a part of the meeting this evening because there's a great desire in me to participate in this community and help build it to be better. We plan on spending a lot of our years here. And so I'm not going to take too much time. I don't really have any concerns. I've spoke to my neighbors to see if they had any concerns at this time. And the only thing that came up was on Latoria, just past the Royal Bay subdivision. There's a bend in the road that at night, there's no light there and the lines are not very clear. And a few people said they've had near miss accidents there. And I don't know if this is the forum to bring that up, but it is a concern that some of the neighbors voiced. And so I thought I would voice it on their behalf tonight. And besides that, I just want to say I'm here to listen and to hopefully see if I can be of service to the community in any way. And that's it.
Well, thank you very much, Jeremy. And I would encourage you to perhaps connect with city staff, specifically the engineering department, just to so they clearly understand kind of the area that that you have concern with. And thank you very much. All right, Amanda.
Okay, so our next person, I'm sure it's one of the two other people, but they didn't provide me with the correct phone number. So I'm just going to announce the last 3 digits of your phone number. It's 968. If you could press *6 to unmute yourself, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, this is John. We had a issue with our connection on the other phone. That's why I had to call from a different phone.
Okay, thanks, John. If you could just give us your name and address and for the record, please. And just to let you know, you've got 4 minutes and I'll give you a bit of a heads up at the 3 minute and 30 second mark so you can conclude your comments.
Sure. Yeah, so my name is John Tarnowski with the address 694 Wildcat Trail. And we were told about this meeting by a developer, and we were coming here to kind of voice some frustration that we have with what's been going on as far as the developer developing the land and wrapping our 2 properties. Well, we have 1 property, but there's 2 houses there, and closing them off as our properties are basically going to be stranded in this area on Wildcat Trail, opposed to near Sook Road. And we're totally willing to sell, but we haven't been made a reasonable offer at even close to what we would consider a reasonable offer for the properties out there. I mean, when I say $250,000 below market value is what we've been offered for the property. And so we're just concerned that what's going to happen is this is all going to go through. Our properties are going to be wrapped and cut off, and there's going to be a big development around it with just 2 houses stuck in the middle of, with no possibility for the future. And I don't really have a whole lot more to say other than that. We just wanted to let you guys know that we're out here and kind of we're worried about what's happening. So,
Great. Well, thank you very much, John, for taking the time to phone in and let committee know of your concerns, and we'll certainly take those into consideration when we tackle that subject later on in the agenda.
okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next person has not arrived. I'm not sure if they will be coming. We did have 3 written submissions though, all regarding Olympian Way. And I believe they were all circulated to council and will be appended to the agenda tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Amanda. And so we will continue on then. We'll go under new business 5.1 and the Superintendent Todd Preston from West Shore RCMP, who will be presenting the West Shore RCMP 2021 annual report. Superintendent Preston, over to you.
All right, can you hear me?
We can. Yep.
Can you see me?
We can't. No.
Oh, I'm trying to show you, but it's not letting me. Oh, there we go. I think the host, she blocked me out, I'm told. All right.
I don't think it's personal.
Well, I hope not. Anyways, thanks very much, Mr. Mayor, Council. Appreciate you having me here. It's unfortunate. I'd love to be there in person, and hopefully we'll be moving back to that sooner than later. I trust you've had a chance to give a quick review of the 2021 annual year-end report from West Shore Detachment. I'll speak to a few of the highlights here and just kind of an overview, and then I'll certainly open it up to some questions and or concerns that you may have. So last year, the West Shore RCMP fielded a total of 24,043 calls for service. And I think that was up close to 1,000 calls, if I recall, from the year prior. Of that, nearly 4,600 calls were attended to in Colwood's area. And, you know, again, I'll remind you that the detachment, for those councillors that aren't familiar, is made up of Langford, Colwood, View Royal, Machosen, Highlands, Songhees, Esquimalt, and obviously the provincial areas on the Malahat as well. The top 5 calls for service, well, I'll give you the top 3 actually. Traffic calls were the most prevalent in 2021, followed by breach and check well-beings. In 2021, we laid or recommended the laying of 1,323 charges to Crown Council. So of those 24,000 plus files, we recommended 1,323 charges to Crown Council. There has been a significant uptake over the last 2 years, upward trend in calls for mental health or mental health related calls. And unfortunately, the average wait times is still close to around 2 hours at the hospitals. And so those are pretty valuable resources that, and I know I've spoken to, and I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but it is very frustrating, you know, having these precious resources, which, you know, obviously show significant cost to your line object there, literally sitting there babysitting individuals that are in crisis. So we went to a tremendous amount of mental health related calls, and we do every day. We apprehended 371 people in 2021 that were, you know, we felt that were a danger to themselves or others. And at that point, we take them up to the hospital. We wait the 2 hours, and sometimes they're admitted by a doctor and sometimes they're not. We wrote just over 4,000 tickets and warnings in terms of road safety. So we have a corporal and 3 constables, and that unit is fully operational, fully staffed, and has been for quite some time here. So we wrote 2,621 written warnings last year, and we wrote 1,773 violation tickets in all of the West Shore area. Obviously, taking taking the advice from councillors and the mayor, we have been strategically focusing in certain areas, and the Lagoon and Fort Rod Hill, and those areas are obviously areas of concern, as is the Royal Bay around the high school and the school zone. So I would again encourage you, if you have areas. I mean, I take my advice and lead from mayor and council and from community members. So if there's areas here that need focus, please reach out to me by email or a phone call so we can help direct those resources appropriately. I was actually happy to see that in December here, we teamed up with URSU to do as part of the National Impaired Driving Counterattack, and we hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vehicles were checked throughout the greater West Shore area, and we actually had no impaired drivers, which was kind of an anomaly. But I don't, close to 25 years of service, I can't say I've ever heard of that, to be honest. So that's a good sign, and I think a sign of things that are changing. Society is changing. They're finally getting it. Enhancing our relationships with our First Nation. Obviously, we have a strong relationship with the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nation, and a lot of that credit goes to our First Nations. It's a dedicated First Nations officer, Constable Cole Brewer, and his whole job is basically to be an ambassador and bridge the connections between the RCMP and our First Nations partners. He does an absolutely tremendous job, has a incredibly strong relationship. And we basically take his lead and we've built on that. He's organized Pro-D paddles with the local school there. So I think it's every 2 weeks, he was trying to get out, hauling the kids out into using our big canoe here. We have a canoe which the province and the federal government bought for us. And I think it was worth around $25,000. It's a very large canoe, and we want to get as much use out of it as possible. It's some of the reconciliation pieces. We want to make sure that we're following the commitment of the federal government, the provincial government. I think just society has recognized it's time. To that end, you'll notice on some of our members, the patches on the back actually have it's Kukale is how it's I'm told it's pronounced, and it says the RCMP, or it says police on the back, and it also has the First Nations writing from a Songhees and a Esquimalt in police, out of respect. And I know that was very well received on our by chief and councils. Crime reduction unit. So a number of years ago, I think it was probably 3 years ago when I first took over here, we only had one crime reduction unit with 3 members here. You guys have been uber supportive, as the other communities as well. We now have a sergeant in charge of that area, organized crime and property crime. That sergeant's responsible for a corporal and 3 constables on crime reduction, as well as a drug corporal and 3 investigators on that side of the house. So just to put it in context here, last year, the crime reduction, the property crime unit, if you will, executed 35 search warrants. One such example was they investigated a group that was a rash of thefts and frauds. They identified a prime suspect through surveillance. They executed a search warrant recovering a vast amount of stolen property connected to a ton of thefts. And 2 individuals were charged with 35 property and fraud offenses. So you can see how being proactive in these types of situations reduces the amount of calls for service, and obviously the victims that we have. We can certainly be reactive, but by having these units and being proactive, sometimes it's tough to measure, but here is one metric that you can use. 35 search warrants for crime reduction on property crime, and the drugs, we executed 45 search warrants. So there's 80 search warrants that were executed last year in relation to drugs, organized crime, and property crime. And so that has a tremendous impact on our communities. And I hope that you see that, because we certainly see the impact, when we have a rash of the theft from vehicles or vehicle thefts or property crime, especially in your situation in Colwood right now, where you've got some incredible growth in terms of the construction industry, the amount of thefts from construction sites. All it takes is 1 or 2 of these individuals, and we're up, 3-4 calls a day. So over, it's 1,000 calls a year type of thing. Community policing, some of the highlights there. We had a Cram the Cruiser event at superstore over the Christmas there, and we were able to help accumulate over 3,000 pounds of food for the food bank, which was absolutely fantastic. We have the new uniform gang enforcement team, which is going to be made up of 3 members. We've got 2 in place and a 3rd here, hopefully in the next little bit. And again, this is one of those things where you go, well, we don't have a gang problem here. You don't right now, but if you leave it to, your very rapidly growing community, and you're nestled between a lot of other fast growing communities, and organized crime will certainly try to infiltrate this area and has infiltrated this area. We need to get in front of this. And I know they were speaking with an individual the other day in your jurisdiction that's of interest to us. And so we're going to keep close tabs on these individuals and let individuals know that if they're affiliated with, organized crime groups, they're not welcome in the Greater West Shore area here. And again, just that proactive attitude. The bike unit, unfortunately, the bike unit, we had to shut it down over the holidays, or probably for the last 4 or 5 months here, just because of resource issues. Like many industries with COVID and just the rapid growth here, we've struggled in mental health. We unfortunately had 17 members off at once. 9 of those were off with pregnancies. Actually, it was 18 members, and another 9 with sicknesses, illnesses, and some of that, obviously, the mental health component. So, we're hopefully having that bike unit back up and running here by May, so that they can patrol, obviously, all your great parks and trails. This year, with the extra bodies, the new bodies that we were afforded by your community, by View Royal and by Langford, we're one of the units we're going to be setting up as a special victims unit. And that's anticipated to start later this year here. And that'll consist of a minimum of 2 individuals. And the sole focus from that is sexual assault, special victims, but sexual offenses, dealing with vulnerable people. And they'll also give oversight to our domestic violence queues as well. But their primary focus is to focus on those vulnerable sexual offenses, not child porn, but just sex assaults and that. And I think the public's come to expect a certain level of service. And I've seen in other communities where that hasn't transpired, and we owe it to the victims and we owe it to the community to do a better job. So that's one of the units that we'll be setting up. In terms of cultural stuff, I had the pleasure of with the other chiefs, the area chiefs here. We went to the local mosque here a number of months ago, and it was quite an eye opener. We dealt with and spoke and broke bread and had a great evening with some of the vulnerable. Some vulnerable people, and as well as some new Canadians and peoples that weren't, particularly aware of Canadian culture and some of the stigmas they had with police, and trying to break down those barriers. So it was the South Asian and Punjabi groups that we met with, and it was absolutely fascinating, to be honest with you. I went home and told my wife it was a fantastic evening there, and you learn just as much from them as they did from us, and try to break down those barriers. So I brought that back to the detachment, just letting some of the members know some of the concerns that perhaps we wouldn't be ordinarily aware of, just because we live and we're born and we're fortunate enough to be born in this country. Restorative Justice, that program is still alive and well and doing very well. One of our auxiliaries spearheads that, Randy Johal. She runs that program, and we have some great success out of it. I love it. It's one of my favorite things here at the detachment. Mental health calls, that's I think we had 1,788 mental health calls. I would suggest that number is probably a lot higher, but those were how they were scored. And those are check well-being, suicidals. I know it's been a tough couple of years, and man, are we ever seeing it here on the front lines. People are struggling, they're hurting, and we're kind of that last line of defense. And I don't pretend to have the answer. I know this is not just a police issue. This is at all levels of government issue here, and I'd be certainly open to talk about a little bit more about that after. The community policing, we're looking at wrapping. Langford Fire was getting rid of a 35-foot motorhome, and so we're going to be acquiring that, wrapping that, and using that as a community policing. So, for your community, I was thinking, and I talked to Mayor Martin a while ago about this, but Eats and Eats down there. I'd love to have our 35-foot wrapped motorhome down there, and being able to do a lot of community policing events with your community there as well. We're looking at doing something for Ukraine right now. I think we're in the process of setting something up with Superstore, where we'll be doing a burger and a pop and by donation type thing, trying to raise some money in partnership with Superstore for the people of Ukraine. We have one of the greater successes we've had this year is probably the community counselor, which I very much appreciate your support on this, and you guys pitch in every year, and you contribute to a counselor from Pacific Family Services, and she partners up. Her name's Julia, and she partners up with our community policing. And those are the youth that we're able to try to reach out to, the youth that weren't dealt a good set of cards in life, and kind of at that fork on the road, it could go either way. And we're able to have those positive contacts with them, and it's worked out fantastic. We've actually been able to kind of get in between a couple of them that were definitely going the wrong way and being sexually exploited and what have you. So it's been a great success, and I look forward to passing on a little bit more. In terms of staffing, we do have a new inspector here, Inspector Stephen Rose from Parksville Attachment. He started a number of months ago, over 20 years service, incredibly intelligent, far more intelligent than I am. And that doesn't say much. That's almost a slight at him. So I look forward to meeting him as well. Some of the issues we're having, when we never had this a number of years ago, was the staffing issues. There is usually a lineup of people here that wanted to come to West Shore. And I think a lot of them still would love to come to West Shore, but the cost of living here for a lot of members has made it just out of reach. And so we're looking at creative ways. And again, I'm open to suggestions or any thoughts, trying to subsidize, especially the new recruits that are coming out, and a lot of them are older. They've got a young family. I got one downstairs here today. It's a single mom. She gets posted here at a depot. How can she afford to live here? And so, the spirit is we want to keep these members and ingratiate them into our communities and get them to know our communities. But if they're living paycheck to paycheck or worse, it's going to be very difficult. So more on that. And of course, one of the other issues that we've got at the detachment is the building has definitely come to the end of its shelf life, and the older part of the building, and we are busting at the seams. I think I mentioned this to you before. I'm working with the CAOs and the mayors on this issue, but it's not going away, and it's getting to a point here. It's something we'll probably have to look at moving some units out at some point here in the next couple of years. I'll open the floor up for questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Preston. And so if committee has any questions, please raise your hand. And I see Mayor Martin, then Councillors Jansen and Kobayashi. Mayor Martin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So I have 6 questions that I've just written down. They should just be fairly quick. The first is on page 36 of our agenda. I'm not sure what page it is for you. It's probably second to last page for you. It's just in regards to the Greater Victoria Police Victim Services. And just looking at the case referral numbers, I can see Saanich at 482 and then West Shore at 468. But then Victoria is dramatically low at 63. And I'm just wondering, can you explain that? Do they have their own service?
No, my understanding was that certain, like Saanich and West Shore, just utilize them a great deal. And, we make sure we hammer down. And I can't say if they've got some other mechanism. I just remember that at Area Chiefs, we had talked about that. And one of the things was, it's, I guess, how much you push the members to utilize that service for your community members. And we want to make sure that our community members are supported. So that's probably all I can say on that.
No, and that's fine. It was just, and I'm glad the numbers where it's at. It's just one of those weird numbers that just popped up and I didn't understand where it was. Yeah. The second question I have for you is in regards to, you mentioned about driving impairment. Can you just quickly comment on cannabis? how has that affected and has the police department figured out how to test for cannabis yet?
Yeah,
Or how is that
sure.
working from an impairment?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's really changed in the sense of impaired by drug. I mean, it was illegal to drive impaired by drug before it was legal to use it. It's no different than alcohol in the sense that you could, it's legal to drink. It's just not legal to drink or drive or use drug and drive. So we have drug recognition experts, and that's where it makes it a little more difficult for day-to-day routine. I call it routine, but for impaireds, we have to utilize those drug recognition experts, and they have specialized training for that.
Okay. My third question is just in regards to the cannabis stores themselves. Have you noticed any increased crime because of those cannabis stores being in our community?
I have not.
Okay, excellent. And sorry, I guess I do have 7 questions. The next is in regards to drugs in our middle and high schools. Is that an issue right now? Is it something that's strong that it is not an issue?
Yeah, it's absolutely an issue. And the reason I say that is because you look, I mean, Google tragedies in high school and, drug related. In fact, I met the mother and father of an Oak Bay student that died of, and I believe it was a fentanyl that caused that death. We are not immune to it here. They are, I mean, we're talking granules, Mr. Mayor, of drug. So it's so easy for individuals to, when they buy something they think they're buying, other than, they go buy a pot or whatever, and it's one thing. But when you're buying drugs off the street, you don't know what you're getting. And it's a hand grenade.
Yeah, I just wanted you to be sure to just talk about that so that our community can still hear that that's something we need to continue to focus on. So I appreciate your comments there. Can you also comment, are you noticing, or does the RCMP have any feelings around Airbnbs and the criminality that's happening with Airbnbs? Is that something that should be on our radar as a municipality?
I would, I mean, yes and no. I think when you look at, and it's funny because, I just ran into this in Langford, where we talk about, the difference and the levels of policing required for rentals versus ownership. And there is a difference. Obviously we have more police contact with rentals than we do with home ownership. And you can, draw, there's lots of reasons and rationale for that. But that's something that I guess would kind of coincide with Airbnbs, perhaps, but I don't think as much. I think if I was a municipality, I'd probably be focusing more on rental versus ownership and doing some research on that.
Okay. Do you have any statistics in regards to how much time your officers are actually spending in Colwood regarding traffic? Because as I said, it's the largest concern that we have, and it's just, what is my answer back to the public of how much time we're investing as a police force in that?
What you are investing is you have 4 police officers. I mean, and when I say you, I mean, I never differentiate between a Langford member and a Colwood member and a View Royal member because we share our services, which is, I'll touch back on that in 1 second here. But you have 4 members that when they're working every day, they're out. And like I said, over 4,000 contacts a year. So it's over a dozen a day for sure that we're writing tickets. And then of course there's, other campaigns that they do, impaired campaigns and school zones where they're just, being a verbal warning. But, we got over 4,000 written warnings as well. So you can tell the communities that we have a designated traffic section and that, we recognize that is Colwood's #1 concern. And again, if council could provide me with a list of some of the areas that they're most concerned about, I would be happy to make that a strategic priority moving this year. When we talk about resources, this gives me, you brought up about, dedicated resources. Souk has around 20 members. I think I've told you this before, but they have no specialized sections. They have barely, I think they're just starting to get 24-hour policing where they don't have an on-call member. The beautiful thing about your guys' relationship here with the communities is you have the drug that we talked about, the crime reduction unit, the community policing, the traffic unit, all these other sections that you guys have the availability to because of this partnership with everybody.
Thank you. And then Chair, my final question. We have 97 officers in the detachment. At least that's what I read. I heard you say that the 18 presently are away on maternity. And then there's, I think, another seven or eight that you said are away for other reasons, which is basically 25% of the force. And I guess my concern would be burning out the officers who are still working. And so is there a and clearly there's not a lot we can do regarding pregnancies. I mean, and I recognize that you have a young force, and so they're going to be having young families. But how do we ensure that the complement is close to 97 as possible when it always seems like we're 20 or so officers short?
So, yeah, you may I either said it wrong or you misheard. It was a total of 18, it was nine,
okay.
9 and 9. And I have asked for STE and so there, which is surplus members, knowing that we're always, and we're now as of this year, we're up to, I think 102, 103 members with the additions, 1 addition from Colwood and 3 from Langford and 1 from View Royal. So we're always going to be in a force this size. We're always going to have people away for whatever reason. You're absolutely right. For the first part of the year, we had, I think, 3 or 4 members. We were doing incredible. And then all of a sudden, through the COVID, I don't know what was going on, but there was a lot of people getting pregnant. And so they were off. In fact, I think we had 10 off at once with maternity or paternity. And then, the burnout, and it's been stressful on everybody, COVID. And I have no doubt, and it's getting busier here. Mental health related calls. You open the paper and lots of negative press about policing. It's not near as easy to attract and recruit good people anymore. And I'm telling you, it's like, the members, myself, we're humans. We break just like you do. And there is members there. That's why, we got to make sure that we have those minimums and we maintain minimums so that we don't burn our people out, because it has that snowball effect where all of a sudden 2 people are off. Now that means, or 3 people on a watch so the watches have 10 on a watch plus E-watch, which is our peak policing. And there's a number of members each day on that. But if all of a sudden you're down 20, 30% and that workload goes to somebody else and then they get stressed out, and it's an area of concern for sure.
Okay, those are all my questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Your questions for the Superintendent, Councillor Jansen.
Thank you. I probably have half as many as the mayor. This is a comment combined with a question, Superintendent, but as you and I discussed, I have been appointed to the Future Policing Provincial Committee governed by Police Services and the UBCM, and we've had 1 meeting and it's already going to have a strong sort of mental health persuasion to the entire dialogue. I think we all recognize that health is a provincial responsibility that's impacting and being offloaded to all the smaller communities in the province, impacting us in different ways. So we are alive to that, and I will make sure that our community is well represented. Along those lines, mental health is a big call category. What is it you or we as a community, or what's our vision for the future as far as how to approach this differently? If it stays as is and there's no changes at senior levels, what kind of things are you considering for the future to help try and mitigate this?
This is probably the single greatest thing affecting day-to-day policing right now. We have pounded our fists on the desk at many levels. I saw Mitzi Dean yesterday. I told her the same thing. it's not sustainable. We need complex care, and you know, people use that complex care. What is that? What complex care means to you and complex care means to somebody else may be different. There's individuals out there that need help, and you know, we as society need to get them that help. I don't know that just buying them a house and housing them first is the proper solution. I think I got to be honest, I think you're missing the first step, and that's stabilizing somebody and then getting them into a house and providing that wraparound support. There is certain individuals that we deal with day in, day out that unmedicated, without proper treatment, without being in a secure facility, are a danger to themselves and others. And those individuals, without question, are out in the community. There is not enough resources. There's not enough beds. There's a reason that we bring people to the hospital on a regular basis. And unfortunately, oftentimes they beat us out the door. We're still doing paperwork at the hospital and they're walking out the door. I don't have an answer, because the answer comes with a lot of money and a lot of will for change. I think we're united in the policing front. You know, the days of putting people, locking them up in these dark, dingy, you know, old facilities, I think nobody wants that. But we do want to see some care facilities where there's staged care, where these individuals can go in when they're at their lowest point, at their worst point in their life. They need medication, they need proper care, proper treatment. And unfortunately, they shouldn't be out in the public because they're a danger to others. And we continually see this where somebody gets victimized, and this individual should not, in my humble opinion, and this may not be reflective of everybody, but they should not have been out in the community. They should have been in a secure facility until they were stabilized, if they can be stabilized. I think it's a small portion. It's not every person that's suffering from depression and mental health we need to lock up. And when I say lock up, you know, I don't mean lock up because they've done something wrong. I mean lock up because they need help. Lock up because they need care, and lock up because they're a danger to themselves and they're a danger to other people. So if there's one thing that I could ask our municipal councils, it's to unite, because I think there needs to be a change. You know, obviously the certain people that don't feel that this is probably the appropriate path, and that's why we shut down all the hospitals. And now we're inundated and we're playing, you know, catch up. So I know that, you know, I'm speaking to the converted probably, but that's one thing. If you want to help policing, that would be one way.
Sounds good. No, along the same lines, this council has chosen to increase our support to the Pacific Center for the Pacific Family Center, Pacific PCFC is not the acronym. I can't quite get it right, but we've chosen.
So that's for, yeah, Councilor, that's for, and I think if it's the same money that you're talking about, for that position with the RCMP to work with our youth, that very reason.
So we've chosen to add additional funding. My question is this: it was put out there by the Pacific Family Center that, or the suggestion was that you know, this in some way mitigates some of the calls for service that may be required of your officers. And I wonder, this is my specific question, I just wonder if there's a way that we can capture that specific interaction in some form or another for us for the next budget season.
Well, it really comes down to, I suppose, faith that, you know, when I tell you that it's having an impact, because I'll tell you if it's not having an impact. I'm not too proud to say, hey, you know, we're setting up a special victims unit here this year. I'll tell you if it fails.
Okay.
You know, I'm not too proud to tell you when I've done something wrong or we're not right. There's not a real tangible, other than giving you some examples of where, you know, how do you forecast that and translate, hey, you know, we're working with a young gal or young man that's dreads going home every day because it's a horrible home life. Mom and dad are drug users or what have you, or they're in the wrong crowd, or they're being sexually exploited, or they're We see it all the time where all of a sudden, the pictures get out to sex, send sex photos or just depression or what have you. And we're able to work with those kids and try to get them some support, get them in the right direction and almost act like a big brother or big sister with them. How do I translate that into a number?
So I'm not cornering you here and now, but I just wonder if we can turn our minds to that for next year. It'll help Councillor Kobayashi sleep better at night if he has some measurables.
I know he's a numbers guy. That's unfortunately sometimes in the policing, it's a gray world. It's not always black and white with numbers.
I hear you. The sex abuse or sex offenses squad, I think that's great, and that's on point for what's happening across Canada. Can you speak briefly, and it's not in the report here, but and I'm not even sure if you have any knowledge of this, but what impact the offloading of sex offenses amongst our armed forces personnel to local agencies, and whether that will have an impact, or if you anticipate an impact, or if it's what your thoughts are surrounding that?
So don't quote me on the number, but I thought they said 5 investigations would have come to us last year in this attachment. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but those are complex, serious allegations. Mm-hmm. Individuals who are arguably posted around this country. They take up a tremendous amount of resources. And I share my friend Del Manick and there's actually all of us, all 7 of us in the area here, all had the same concerns. It was, and especially Del, because they got the base in Esquimalt there, and we have the housing at here in Colwood. So there's again another download of resources or files requiring resources to us here, and I don't think it's going to be. The primary thing is that we need to support victims, and we can fight the bureaucracy later of who pays for it and how it's paid for. What I want to make sure is that when somebody reports a sex assault, that somebody competent, if it was your daughter or son reporting it, would you not want somebody competent? We're going to, that special victims unit, that's exactly what they're for. Not just obviously there, but for all the communities here.
I think I would love some feedback after this percolates for a while on what kind of time vacuum this might be, or if there is a significant offload of these investigations, because that is arguably a federal responsibility that's being offloaded on a community police service. And then we can help advocate with higher levels of government on your behalf.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions, Councillor Jansen?
Yes, I do.
Let's ask.
So bylaws enforcement in the city of Colwood, we made changes to our bylaws process, and I just wonder if that's reached your officer's hands as of yet. And I'm thinking in the way of ticketing and booklets, stuff like that.
I'm not aware of it. It may have gone down to the ops officer with Steve Rose there, and I can't speak for that, though. I personally haven't seen it. So,
okay, thank you. I'm now out of questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Councillors Kobayashi and Councillor Day, your questions. Done.
Thanks very much, Chair. Superintendent Preston, thank you very much for the report. It was an excellent report. Get better and better every year, I can tell you that. So very, very happy. So excuse my ignorance, but can you just define, I just have 2 or 3 really simple questions here.
Sure.
What's a breach? What are breaches? How do you define that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a good question. So when somebody's charged with an offense, or they're put on conditions, during the charge process. So let's say, for instance, I get charged with assault tonight, and they put me on conditions to have no contact with somebody, not drink alcohol. That would be a breach if I contravene those. If you go to court and you get sentenced and part of it's probation, a breach on that as well, if you don't adhere to those conditions as well.
Okay. Second question, just another easy one, I believe. The wellness checks. I don't know if you're aware that Langford started this thing that they do within the municipality. I was wondering if you're aware of it, number one, and if it's making an impact on, the number of incidents or the call outs that, you're looking at on the checking of well-being of citizens. Are you aware of what Langford is doing, and has that had an impact?
No, I'm not. Maybe I'm aware. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Langford.
They have this program right now, and I'm not too sure who's actually doing it, but I understand it's a volunteer group of people that Stu has organized. And what they were doing, especially, they were doing it a lot. They were calling people and just doing these well-being checks with citizens, normal citizens. And so they started this thing, and from what I understand, it's still ongoing. And I was just wondering if that's having an impact.
Well, I wonder if that's in reference to, we have a Keep in Touch program.
I think that's what it is.
Okay,
yes.
So that's not just. I don't believe that's just Langford. I'll have to check into that, but don't quote me on that. But we have a program where we call seniors every day. We have volunteers that call, and they just make sure that they're doing okay. They don't need anything yet. So it's a fantastic program. That's how we should treat our seniors.
Right. I don't think we have one here in Colwood. Not that I know of. But maybe we do.
I'm going to check on that, Councillor, and I'll
get
back to you to see if that's a shared program or not.
Okay. And the crimes, so just two more questions. Crimes against persons. I'm looking at your 2021 numbers. How does that compare to 2020, like the year before? Are we up significantly? Like I see overall stats, and you give percentages.
I'd have to refer to the report, to be honest, for each stat. I don't know that one offhand.
Yeah, you have an overall, I think it's up 1.8% overall. And that's according to your table 4. But I was just wondering if with these numbers, assaults, uttering threats, if those numbers have switched somewhat, or if, they're the same sort of in the same ballpark.
Well, the crimes against person looks like it's up 18%.
Well, 18%. Yeah, I can't even read. I thought it was 1.8. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's all right. Yeah, no, I think so. We had, crimes against person in 2019, we had 279. In 2020, we had 328. So we saw an 18% increase against crimes against person. So an extra 50. Now we had an extra 1,000 calls well, but it's probably a higher correlation than it should be. But we're all, offenses against property, you're down 23%. Other criminal code, you're down 19%. And there's an increase in controlled drugs and substances of 6%. So, yeah, we're up around 50 files, I guess it would be, for crimes against person from the year prior.
Okay. And just the last question, and I guess it wasn't, I thought it was just hearsay when someone said this to me. I says, well, prove it. But you said something tonight and it hit home, and it was that rentals versus ownership and crime. And I believe I heard you say that that the crime is higher with rentals.
Well, what I'd like to do is if you guys, and it requires your staff giving me a list, but if you guys give me a list of your properties, your large rental complexes, large condo complexes, and this is important, I think, for a community such as yourself that's growing and has ginormous plans here for growth in the next few years. And then you can just see, and you can kind of balance the types of builds and everything from, there's clearly correlations between kind of if there's more lower end rentals to higher end rentals to lower end ownership to higher end ownership. And if you give me those, I can have our analyst do a little analysis, which I know you love charts and graphs and pies, but I'm happy to do that for you. But all joking aside, I think it would be advantageous for council to have a look at that. It might help for planning purposes.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. Councillor Day, some questions for the superintendent.
Thanks. I just don't have my video on because I have terrible internet. So I hope you don't mind just my little bobblehead there. I'm just curious. You made some comments about the police building itself. And I was looking for that in the report and I didn't see anything. So I'm just wondering, is that going to be coming forward in some other format that I could look forward to, or is that part of this?
No, that really didn't form part of the report. It's more of an ongoing kind of process. I do meet regularly with the CAOs from Colwood, View Royal, Langford, and I'll be setting up the meeting with as well as the mayors here sooner than later to speak on kind of a long-term plan, a short-term and a long-term plan on how we're going to deal with the growth of the membership and the detachment.
Great, thank you. And the other issue for me is we used to do some evaluations of the services that you provide, not because we want to be critical, but because we want to make sure we're investing in the things that are going to pay off for our community.
Yep.
And so we're I'm not seeing anything in your annual report that talks about, you know, how your planning versus your reality has worked out as far as your budgeting is concerned, or where we're at in terms of things like fleet replacement and all the other things that we worry about for ourselves in the city. I also worry about them for you, because that can add up to a big budget hit for us. So is that something that is coming to a future meeting, or is that something we should ask now?
I've got to be honest, I don't think I've ever talked to about, you know, ongoing budgets at, I mean, I'm transparent. It makes no difference to me. And I think we were a couple $100,000 to the good here last time. But typically I deal with the CAO on those matters regarding financial, like day-to-day financial stuff and any capital improvements or any of that sort of stuff. But, you know, if it was the wish of the council, I could try to bring something else forward. In terms of checks and balances, you know, it's a great question when you talk about it. It's something I actually am pretty passionate about myself. I want to know how we're doing. And so we have retired members, 2 retired members that are op support that they help the watch commander every day, and they go through all the files, and they basically read all the files and bring that to the attention of the watch commander to make sure that if there's anything that he or she needs to know, and kind of filters through the files. What they do, and what I've asked them to do, is to do random samplings, and they do it quite frequently, like every week. They're phoning complainants randomly. And how did we do? You know, almost like you know, private industry, but we phone and say, listen, you reported last night, you know, that your, you know, car was vandalized, or that you were assaulted, or this or that. Can you tell me how the member made you feel? Did you feel like we were professional? They go through a series of questions, and I'm pretty proud to say that I think it's 96% or whatever it was comes back very positive. So, because that's one thing I am very passionate about, is making sure that the public sees us in good light. I take a lot of pride in wearing this uniform, and I want to make sure that we're giving you a good service. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I would like to see some budget numbers, because I think that is important, and it's something that we have done for many years in the past. Just to look at, you know, not because I want to micromanage anything, but I think our community wants to know. We provide those sort of statistics for our fire department. We provide them for our own public works and engineering vehicles. Is something I would like to see.
I think you could probably, Councillor, I think you can get that internally, because every month the RCMP sends a report to your city outlining where we are and where we spent money and where it's at.
Well, we can. We'll have to double check with staff then on that and see what information they can provide us in that regards. Then.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Day, Mayor Martin, and then I think we're going to move on.
Thank you, Chair. Just sorry, I wouldn't normally ask to speak a second time, but just a couple of things. First of all, the Keep in Touch program is a West Shore wide program. It is not a Langford program. So it already occurs in Colwood. The second thing is I want to challenge you, Superintendent, just in regards to your comments regarding rentals. We have a lot of rental projects that we're hoping to move forward in the next little while. And I certainly don't want this to be the discussion point that rentals bring criminality to my area. So can you please clarify your comments?
Sure. When we did a statistical analysis between Langford, in Langford, between ownership and rentals and types of rentals, there was, it's not, when you say criminality, there was more calls for service, Mr. Mayor. So, it doesn't mean that it's going to be hard, because you have rental buildings, you're necessarily going to be harboring criminals everywhere. But it does bring more, and whether that be cause disturbance by noise complaints, by more partying, more mischief, more thefts, or what have you. I can bring you the, we can look at, and maybe your community is different. So if you bring me the buildings, I'd be happy to give you a breakdown of.
Well, I guess I'm more concerned about the opposite, I'm going to call you Inspector, Superintendent, is because, what will happen is I will hear in public hearing from people going, no, we shouldn't have rentals within our community now, because our superintendent has said that that's bringing a level of crime to the area. And I just want to be clear. I don't want to, and I don't believe that that's the case. I believe that you can have an integrated community, but it sounds like you believe it is. And if that's the case, then yeah, I would like you to come back and share further information.
Yeah, on that point. Yeah, you need rentals in your community. We all need rentals. It's just one of those things. It's, if you have nightclubs in your community, you're going to have more calls for service. If you have more commercial, you're going to have more calls for service. And in terms of it goes into planning. That's all it is. Not to say you shouldn't have rentals, just know that there may be more calls for service with certain things. And you need to look at what those types of calls for service are. No different than if you decide you're going to have 3 nightclubs in your area. So that's my only point to that. I have young daughters too. They need rentals. All our kids need rentals. So I'm certainly in no way, shape, or form discouraging a community from putting rentals. I'm just suggesting there is cause and effect with everything, and that's such is life.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Thank you, Superintendent Preston, and I think on behalf of our whole community, just know how much we appreciate the work that you and your members do, and it's certainly noticed. And it's so nice to have members on the side of the road and in parking lots doing their work and being highly visible. And it's making a difference. So I appreciate your time tonight as well.
Hey, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Okay, good night.
Okay, good night. All right, we will move on to item 5.2, a report from our senior planner, Yasmin Hernandez, on OCP rezoning amendment application 3601 Olympia Way. Yasmin, over to you.
Hi there. Through the chair, I'm going to share my screen and share my presentation with you all. Can you see my screen?
We can, yes.
Okay. So we are here tonight reviewing the joint rezoning and OCP amendment application for 3601 Olympian Way. This is an application for the southeast corner of Veterans Memorial Parkway and Latoria Road on the newly constructed Olympian Way. The property is characterized by large rock outcrops that stand between 3 and 6 meters higher than the road grades along Latoria Road. So it's a prominent feature of the land at that corner. The history of Olympic View is quite extensive. The first rezoning and OCP amendment consideration that enabled residential development in the Olympic View lands happened 20 years ago in 2002. And since there's been various iterations and various applications to move these development forward. Most recently, in 2017, the property owner and applicant initiated the subdivision process to create 35 new residential lots, 3 of which were created with the intent of accommodating townhome developments. As part of that subdivision process and through the 2 years that subdivision process took place, there was a requirement for an environmental development permit to align that subdivision with the objectives of site adaptive planning, ensuring that the creation of these lots adhere to the expectation of site adaptive. The application that is before us is proposing a 90 unit rental apartment, 7 stories with a density of 1.4 floor area ratio. The application package includes a few renderings, generally speaking, as to the intent of the building, how it's to blend in with the nature to retain the features of the land and work with the topography. I believe the applicant has a more extensive presentation that will walk you through the care and thought that was put through the early design process as to how to best align these apartment building, the massing, the scale, and the height, and how to bring it forward with careful consideration to the topography. The summary of land uses is in page 6 of your report, page 6 of 12 of the staff report. And it basically speaks to that height, 7 stories, 24 meters, apartment buildings being the land use being proposed. There is also an extensive review of the official community plan and how this amendment to the OCP aligns with policies that go from specific policies within the existing local area plan. The local area plan back in 2002 considered a maximum of 456 units to be the size of the residential development in Olympic View. So these units proposed, these 90 units proposed, are simply a reallocation of that already considered density of 456. Is simply relocating, bringing those units forward towards the entrance of this Olympic View development and aligning, finding better alignment with the official community plan designation for these properties as part of the neighborhood center. There are also synergies with additional policies in the official community plan that speaks to focusing the growth and focusing the intensity of density along intended growth areas. There is also support for an apartment built form up to a maximum of 6 stories. The additional 7-story in this case is a factor of that specific topography of the land, and as an attempt from the applicant to limit the amount of blasting to create. In order to create an underground parkade structure, there will be substantial blasting and the loss of that prominent rock feature of the site. So in order to retain that feature, the entire 7 stories are perched on the rock using that topography to minimize, and I believe the applicant's team will do a far better job, more eloquent with better images than myself to go over those details. That said, there's citywide policies and objectives within the OCP that support that enabling of diverse housing types throughout the city, the enhancing the diversity of housing choices. The vast majority of the 35 lots that were created on the first phase of Olympic View so far, the vast majority of them are duplexes and single family homes. So these two apartment buildings that we're discussing tonight will bring a diversity of housing typology. And in this particular case, a diversity in the tenure type. I just realized that my slide does not include a commentary on site adaptive, but as I've mentioned before, the environmental development permit, DP 17013, has already protected and achieved the protection of a wetland, the creation of trails that will be it's allowing public access through a network of trails, and it has achieved the conservation of over 16,000 square meters of protected areas that are at the back of the properties in phase one of the development. So the amendment in question is asking to change the map of the local area plan and highlight this particular lot 35, and allow it to have apartment buildings as the permitted land use. In order to integrate the rezoning within the existing wording in the neighborhood center designation, staff are also proposing to incorporate a few additional policies to guide the development of these lots. Specifically, we would like to emphasize the focus should be in this particular lot. It should be on integrating entrances and public interface functions to express a pedestrian scale and create variation and visual interest along the street. The community amenity contributions have been discussed with the applicant. He has been made aware of the interim community amenity contribution that was adopted by council on February 14, that requires $4,500 contribution per apartment dwelling unit. However, the applicant has requested that council consider the existing contributions within the Olympic View zone, and that those are the contributions that they would like to make going forward as part of this application. The notification sign has been posted on the property, and the application has been made publicly available on the city's website. And were we to proceed ahead with a public hearing, the city will be not making notifications in accordance with our land use procedure bylaw in the Local Government Act. The report includes options for council to consider. The first option is the staff recommendation, as well as an alternative option would be for the application to be deferred for further information, or a third option would be that the application be denied. That is all for my part in my presentation, but I just would like to introduce the applicant's team, who is also in attendance tonight and has prepared a presentation of their own to walk council through their presentation, unless council has questions for myself now or would like.
Yeah, I think we'll have the presentation, please, Yasmin, and then we'll go back to questions for both. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so my apologies, who's going to be making the presentation? Who are you introducing? Must be Mr. Rowe.
Yes, thank you. My name is Christopher Rowe. I'm a principal of Lowe Hammond Rowe Architects. With me is my colleague and associate, Jan Paselski. And my client, Peter De Zwager, is on the call as well. Peter, I don't know if you wanted to make any opening remarks. You just jump in if you do. I'd just like to note that I have been working at Olympic View for over 30 years. It spans almost all of my professional career, going back to the clubhouse and the original rezoning in 1996. And it includes my authorship of the original design guidelines from the 90s for the site, which I'd like to think anticipated Colwood's site adaptive design guidelines in the OCP. From the beginning, Olympic View was seen as a place where the importance of and the quality of the natural environment was like maybe not a unique selling proposition, but certainly a very important part of the character and value of the site. And those original guidelines and the new guidelines, and I'd like to think our design for this project follow those to the letter. Let me share my screen and I will get on with things. Is everybody seeing my screen now?
We can, thanks, Christopher.
Thank you. So I'll just start with, sorry, I need to switch back to my, there. It's not letting me move my slides. There we go. I don't know what's going on here. Apologies here, let's see, there we go. Okay, so it's important, you're going to hear a presentation from Aspen later for our accompanying application for lot 3, just to the west. I'll just note that most of these plans, north is to the right of your screen. So this site is long and narrow in the north-south direction. On the east side of Olympian Way and on the southeast corner of the new roundabout at the foot of Memorial Parkway. Both of these buildings were conceived together. They follow similar design principles, as you'll see, and aimed at setting these buildings up as a notional gateway to the entire Olympic View property. It's an interesting location vis-a-vis the OCP. It's very close in plan view anyway to the existing neighborhood center to the northwest and northwest, and I believe another dense development proposed for the northeast corner of the roundabout. So in an ideal world, these would be mixed use neighborhood center type projects, but the site, as you're probably aware, is complex, it's steep, it's up in the air, and it has some nice landscape character to it. So it really doesn't work well for street level commercial uses. And to do that would probably result in some even more drastic changes to the topography. So there's another view of the site. It's relatively well treed. It's elevated above the neighbors to the east at Heron's Landing. And then it looks like it levels out towards the south here on the right of your screen, but then it falls off quite dramatically. So it has a lot of encumbrances on it.
There, we're not seeing the presentation advance.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
thank you, Councillor Baxter. I was just going to mention that same thing.
Oh dear.
Chris, I will share the screen if you won't mind.
Why don't you try yours? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, there we go.
Now we see the picture, lot 35 from the drone.
Okay, everybody's seeing the photo?
Yes,
please.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, please, Jan.
I'll share the screen. Just give me a second.
Yeah,
yeah.
It seems like it's working on your machine, but not on mine. So
yeah.
okay. So there's the slide where I was talking about the two buildings basically working as a gateway at the roundabout entrance to the Olympic View site. Next. And here's that illustration of where the OCP marks location of a neighborhood center. As I say, and then the next slide really shows the topographic constraints that make a conventional sort of street frontage, commercial street frontage challenging, or would result in even greater disruption of the landscape. Next, please. So there's that, I was talking about the site being reasonably well treed. It looks like it levels out on the right-hand side of your screen, but then it slopes down quite dramatically. Next. And there's a diagram basically showing the encumbrances on the site. The blue represents sort of conventional setbacks from the property line. The orange is a riparian area near the wetland at the lower part of the site. And then there are two green environmentally sensitive areas that don't intend to build in. And you can see the contours. The building slopes down from the upper right down to the lower left quite dramatically, about 9 meters overall, and leaving this rather funny shaped yellow area as a buildable area for us. Next. So a close-up of the site plan. I think I'll just, it's really just a rough idea of what the building might look like, I guess, and how it might be landscaped. But you can see that I think the distinguishing feature and the main mover of this design has been to get all the parking under the building or underground, and to minimize the disruption of the landscape. I've done other projects where we've been able to excavate in rock within about 1.5 meters of existing vegetation and trees and preserve that. And that's really what we hope to do here. So there are some ramps from the intersection, and there's a good section that shows how the parking sits under the building. And that's what, effectively, it's a 6-story building. It's defined as 7 stories, but it's 2 levels of parking and 6 stories of apartments above. Now, I think everybody's familiar with the rising costs of under-building parking, depending on the size of the building and the number of parking spaces. We find it ranges from between 50 to up to 100,000 on a small building per space, and that gets added to the cost of construction, and that has been one of the main drivers for the size of the building. To develop this site in a meaningful way and not just flatten it for townhouses, it means going up. Next, please. So this diagram shows there's 2 things going on with that kink in the building. The upper stories of the building are kinked to move them as far away as practical from the neighbors in order to both reduce overlook and shadowing. And the parking levels, which will probably be exposed, the upper level will be exposed behind a screen. The lower level will be probably mostly below grade. It's pushed out, and again, that's just to minimize the disruption to the landscape through blasting. Next. So there's this diagram shows it quite well, those 2 kinks. Next. That's I think, a reasonable representation of the number of trees that are able to be preserved. Certainly all the designated trees, and then all the understory and smaller trees around the perimeter, we would hope to maintain in a natural state. We don't pretend that the trees will hide the building, although some of the trees are as tall as the building, in fact. But they will provide, I think, a nice filtering from the streets and from the neighboring property to the east. Next. So next few slides are really all about just that principle of hiding those cars, and that's really what's driven the design. Next. The other proposed feature is that the building steps down with some nice terracing on the south. That'll make those units rather special, but it does also drop the scale down dramatically to start to match the lower density development proposed nearby to the south and to the west. And again, the parking was a real driver here. Next. And that, is a rough idea of the separation between the two buildings. I know there were some questions about shadow studies. I can address that later if there's interest. We have done a bit of a shadow study on the project, but it wasn't included in our package. So this is a view from the pedestrian area at the southwest corner of the traffic circle of lot 35 on the left, and you can just see the rock outcrop that's part of the lot 3 site on the right. Next. And a view from within the Olympic View property to the east to the building. You can see that stepping. And quick summary of the project data. It is within all the existing zoning criteria for under the maximum density, under the maximum lot coverage. The only ask here is for that additional height, which we've kind of cast as asking for a little bit of that neighborhood center density on a site that sort of might be described as a hillside site. This project provides roughly just over 6 times as many homes as the previously laid out townhouse scheme, with only a modest increase in hard surface coverage of the site. I think that's Jan, is there anything else important that I have missed in that, or Peter?
Thank you, Chris. I think you captured everything.
All right. I will will return to the committee for questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I will turn to committee, and Councillor Kobayashi, you're first off.
Hey, thanks very much. Thank you very much for the presentation, Christopher. And so I'm still trying to understand the 45 meters you're talking about in height. Is that at the tallest peak part of the building, like from ground level, or is that?
That would be from the average grade calculation, I believe, to the top of the roof. So average grade is somewhere in the middle between the highest point of the site and the lowest point of the site. So
it could be as high as, say, 50 meters or so then?
Well, at the let's say the highest point of the site, the proposal it's about 5.5 stories above the highest point of the site. And then at the lowest point of the site, at the southeast corner where the riparian area starts, it is the full, it could appear as almost 8 stories, 7.5 stories, because of the way it's sunk into the slope. Is that?
So obviously there's some blasting involved in this then.
There's definitely blasting involved, and we have tried to find a happy medium between some blasting and no blasting. I believe that even with the development of the site as a low density project of townhouses, there would still be blasting in order to get some platforms.
It can't unfortunately be avoided here.
Exactly. We want to hide what the evidence of the blasting when the building is done, I believe, will be invisible. Like you won't be seeing any cuts or walls or escarpments within the bounds of the site.
Okay. And the second question I have at this point in time is, will we see the traffic impact assessment before we take this to first or second reading?
I believe so.
To answer your question, Mr. Kobayashi, yes, we'll be issuing the TIA in the next couple of weeks here.
Okay, thank you.
Yasmin, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so Peter is speaking to the transportation impact assessment that is being put together to assess the increase in the city of Langford side. But this specific rezoning is simply looking at shuffling density that is already being considered under the 2002 rezoning. So Peter will be making available for council that transportation impact assessment that looks at the increase in density for Langford, like we had previously, council had previously asked in the past. But these particular rezonings for tonight are not subject to a traffic impact assessment because they were the density was accommodated and considered back in 2002. So the lands can already accommodate 456 units. And those accommodations were made back then when. But for the further increase in the Langford site and to study and analyze those impacts, the TIA will be coming forward.
Okay, that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. I've got Councillors Day, Baxter, and Parkinson. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'd like to know, as you were going through your slides, it looked like the access to the underground parking was along the side of the building next to Heron's Landing. Is that correct?
No, it is off Olympian Way at the, I guess, more along the west side of the property towards the southern end of the property.
Okay, so you'll be blasting your entrance in to the rock there?
We're trying to work with the grade there. There will be lighter blasting, but the ramp down into the garage is sort of being, it's crossing the slope of the site at that point. So it's not deep into the hillside at that point. But yes, there will inevitably be a little bit of blasting there.
Okay, and your second level of underground parking is not really going to be underground?
The portion of at the southeast face of the parking garage, it will be partially exposed, but it's at that point, it is definitely hidden well behind the riparian area and the environmentally sensitive area, which are not going to be touched. So difficult to see at that point. And that's at the very lowest point of the site.
Okay, and the traffic impact assessment is going to be done that reflects what's happening on the Langford side. But really, back in 2002, we didn't have a transportation management plan whatsoever. So do you have a sense? You've told me how many units are going to be in your building. How many bedrooms are going to be in your building?
That's a good question. I'm going to say 150. We haven't done detailed interior planning at this point.
Okay.
Somewhere north of 150, I would think.
Mr. Deswagger, I see your hand up too. You had a comment for?
Through the chair, just to comment on Cynthia's comment on the traffic study. Olympic View did an extensive traffic study with Royal Bay and Royal Beach, and we included all of the density in both Colwood and Langford in that traffic study that was completed in 2019. And we are updating another traffic study solely with Olympic View's densities in Langford that we have had first reading for 1,000 units, up from 461. And we are also including about 800 units of density in Colwood in that study, although we have not asked for increased density yet.
Okay, but you don't know what sort of configuration your units are going to be, like how many bedrooms?
Well, we don't, probably 80% of this building would be 2 bedrooms, 10% 3 bedrooms, and the rest 1 bedrooms. But that's just a rough guess at this point. When we're at this point, we're trying to get to the permission to actually build a building like this. We haven't fully designed it because that costs a lot more money than just putting this presentation together, which also costs quite a bit. But we'll do that if we get the zoning to do this, or permission to do this, I should say.
Okay, thank you. And it is a significant height, and you mentioned the shadow study had preliminarily been done. And I think that is really important for your neighbors to know about. So that is quite important to me. We've had a lot of initiatives in Colwood, including Solar Colwood. We invest in our parks and our natural infrastructure, and we want to be fair to all of our residents that what they bought, that its value will remain.
Oh, absolutely. And with the chair's permission, at any point in the proceedings, I'm happy to show, I have 4 slides prepared that show what I would call the edge cases, where the property affects Heron's Landing. I can say that the difference, I mean, certainly with the heavily treed site and the raised topography, during the summer and during spring and fall equinox, there's a minor impact in our opinion, and it mainly affects the area of parking lot at the northwest corner of the Heron's Landing site. This is certainly something that we would, in any development permit application, be showing full detail on. But as I say, I have 4 slides that compare the shadows of the site and the trees to the shadows of the site, trees, and proposed massing.
Mr. Chair, may we see those?
Absolutely.
All right, hopefully I will have better luck in sharing my screen this time. Let me just... Are you seeing my screen?
You betcha. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Okay. So just move that. Okay. So I start with 4 p.m. spring and fall equinox. So that's sort of April and September 21st. On the left in these slides, I've just turned the building off so you can see where the shadows of the trees are falling. And you can see that they're mainly falling on the parking lot, as I say, at the northwest corner of the site. If the trees weren't cut down, they would probably be a little denser in terms of the shadowing. But you can see on the right-hand slide how the building shadow falls along that line to the west of the Aaron's Landing apartment buildings. And sorry, for some reason there we go. Okay, there it is at 5 p.m. You can see that by 5 p.m. the site itself is providing almost as much shadow as the proposed building. And then by 6 p.m. I didn't even show the building because the Heron's Landing site is fully shadowed by the existing topography. I'll just note that these are conservative because we don't have perfect topographic information for Heron's Landing site. So if anything, it's a little lower than it is in reality. Here's the summer solstice, so middle of or towards the end of June, and the shadows are falling in a bit more of a diagonal there. You can see that the site at 4 o'clock is shading the Heron's Landing site quite extensively, and the building continues to do that. We don't think the impact of the building is significant in any way on any of the sites to the north. As I say, we'll do a full study of both buildings at the time of development permit to demonstrate this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Day. Councillor Baxter.
Right. So in the OCP, and this is a question for staff, 26.1.12, which is part of the area plan for Olympic View, says transit planning shall be considered in more detail in future planning of the project. So I just wonder what staff can tell us about transit planning at this stage as it applies to this building.
So we have referred the application to BC Transit, and as part of the BC Transit future, what do we call it? Future rapid transit plans, Latoria and Veterans Memorial Parkway are both flagged as future corridors for transit. And there is accommodations for transit stops pretty much at every one of the streets of the roundabout. So on each side of the roundabout, there is a traffic stop. Now, when I think this application is part of us providing support and the necessary density to bring that to realize that vision of BC Transit, to be able to enable the density that would support that rapid future extension going on Veterans Memorial Parkway and Latoria. It is these apartment buildings that bring compact development and the number of people that could make it, could continue to build a case for better service along these corridors.
Thank you. I have some questions about the OCP amendment. So as I read the area plan part of the current OCP, it does not in any way preclude this development because it shows, it already shows that area as attached dwellings. And just looking at the area plan part, it doesn't say, it doesn't apply any building heights or anything like that. That's in the zoning bylaw. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the official community plan doesn't have a definition for, I suppose, attached housing, but what Colwood has generally labeled as attached housing to be consistent with the land use bylaw refers to townhomes. And so if it had meant to be multifamily or apartment buildings, it would have stated as much. So in Olympic View in the local area plan, the apartment build form was, in the 2002 map, was located in the village center. So the area that was considered village center, that's where the multifamily apartment was enabled. And the rest, the other lots that are labeled as attached housing, those referred effectively to townhomes. Despite not having a definition, this is how they've been consistently interpreted and the understanding from both the applicant and staff.
Okay, that's much clearer. Thank you. Okay, in the applicant's presentation, there are, I guess you could describe them as green roofs indicated in certain places, although you could call them patio gardens equally. Will these be required by the rezoning or the development permit?
So currently staff are not proposing a development agreement because a lot of the environmental, the vast majority of the environmental considerations have been met through the environmental development permit with the dedication of the wetland, the trail system, and the conservation areas. However, if council wishes to add or secure further, then that could be a conversation for council with the applicant. I know that there are certainly the proposal as shown does incorporate some green roofs and amenity space for the residents of the apartments that is accommodated on site. As I said, I think Chris spoke to these, how it's preliminary designs at this point in time, that they haven't gone in to do a detailed building design. So this is not ready. This is not development permit ready, but it is a schematic showing massing and scale and the intent, the principles of using the staggering, kind of the stepping down, the working with the slope, in the general position and setbacks that they will respect. But if council has further guidance to provide as to the elements that you would like to secure, then by all means, we'll establish those conversations with the applicant.
Okay, and finally, this building is proposed to be rental. Is staff going to secure that with a covenant?
We have also discussed this element with the applicant, and he seemed open to considering a Section 219 securing the rental component for a length of time. I believe the length of time that was proposed was a 10-year a covenant securing rental for a minimum of 10 years. So we can definitely come back and clarify that intent.
Okay, thank you. Then I would say in relation to the green areas shown on the surface of the building and the rental covenant, I won't be bringing those up further at this stage, but I think we'd like to see those settled before this gets to adoption, obviously, one way or the other. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Baxter. I've got Councillors Parkinson and Jansen. Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This project is kind of at the let's throw spaghetti at the wall, see if it sticks stage. You know, the applicant has provided some information, and we all have a whole bunch of questions, and he's saying, well, gosh, I could probably answer those if I thought I had a little more confidence to go forward. I like what I see here, to be honest. I think the buildings look quite nice, as we'd expect from Chris. Still doing good work. But so some of my things that I would like maybe some clarity on and some content. I must admit, I don't consider a rental agreement for 10 years being the same as a rental building. I can living in a condominium that's about 10 years old. I watch my neighbors that are renting getting thrown out because the market is great and people want to sell. And so they're looking for rental in the hottest time of the market. So, you know, that's me. That's a concern. Address it as best you can, Yasmin. Again, the plans, as I said, I quite like the look of them. I think it's probably too early to cast them in stone and say you must build this or we're going to revoke whatever approvals we give you. But at some point, I think we need assurances that what council sees and approves is carried forward and followed to the end. So that's good. For the applicant, I would caution. I'm not sure where the visitor parking is. Obviously, this is not an area where there could be a lot of overflow parking on the streets nearby. So you'll have to give some consideration to visitor parking. And I would suggest under that thing, not taking the draft bylaw as gospel yet. There's certainly some debate around the council table whether we like that bylaw or not. So you know, you'll have to give us some data to back that up if that's your intent. I think I frankly, Chris, I didn't think your answer to the height from Councillor Kobayashi was your finest hour. I was just as confused at the beginning, at the end. And I think really what everyone wants to know is what's the height of this building compared to, you know, the other building you're proposing and the two buildings on the other corner of the VMP in Latoria, and how does it sort of compare to those? That's probably useful information for us. And then the only other thing I wanted to comment on was the community amenity charges. I see the developer has proposed that he should grandfather the 2002 amenity charges, and good for him. I can see him liking that, and I'm sure council will support that if he sticks to renting and selling the units at the 2002 prices. But otherwise, I think he might have a little trouble with that argument, to be perfectly honest, as we go forward. So you know, I certainly think there's enough here that we should go forward. I mean, it doesn't guarantee anything, but it gives perhaps enough confidence to answer a few of the questions we've heard around here tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Jansen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and very sage commentary from my peer, Councillor Parkinson. I struggled a bit with the 2002 amenities package, and I'd like that revisited. I like some of the area residents have concerns about the blasting, so the more that can be considered as far as mitigating some of the blasting, I think would be appreciated. I look at that building and I count 6 stories, and I know we have to include the sort of the exposed parking garage, but quite frankly, you know, I see a 6-story residential structure. And Mr. Rowe, as the architect, I see people walking on the roof on your pictures. Is that factual or is that just for effect?
Would you like me to answer?
Sure.
It's an idea that is not yet, I'll say on behalf of my client, has not yet made its way into a development permit application. But I will say that because of the commitment to preserve natural landscape on this treed and rocky site, the residents do need some flat amenity area for whatever it is they want to do, barbecues, badminton, sunbathing, that sort of thing. The concept with the projecting parking that sort of wedge-shaped space provides some of that open amenity area, but I think I'm going to encourage my clients to to consider some rooftop amenity. It is expensive, of course, you know, and it does relate to the kind of rents that can be captured.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that's a neat feature, and I think it would fit with much of the good work that Olympic View has done to date to sort of be a little bit upscale. This is a gateway to, in essence, a portion of our community that's being densified and is identified as a community hub or node, whatever you want to refer to it as. I like the fact that it's almost like bookends at the entrance there. I think that's neat. Can you talk to me a bit about, is there anything contemplated as far as some kind of beautification or exterior artwork or something that's reflective of our community, as far as a feature wall? Or I mean, some developers have chosen to put some artwork on the outside of the exterior of the building, that kind of idea.
I think that would certainly form part of our next round of design if we get an opportunity to move forward on this. We have, in some of our earlier studies, it's not really represented in our application, but we have spent some time looking at what is the impact of those two building faces that face north to the parkway. And you know, I think it'll present, you know, I won't say it's dramatic, but it's, you know, it's interesting and legible at an urban scale from the parkway.
And even you know, some signage that welcomes people to the area, or what have you. I'll leave that thought with you. I know we haven't got to the other building yet, but from reading, it looks like the other building is shorter. Is that right?
That's correct, and that's in part because its site is higher, and also because it is more constrained and challenging to put, again, because of the various encumbrances on the site, to put as much parking. So it's, you know, that's a big driver of why that building is smaller. Okay. But because of the different topography, the two buildings present themselves at approximately the same roof height.
Thank you for that. And one comment that did come to me from a constituent was, well, you know, why don't we swap the smaller building for the larger building? But from what I'm hearing, that it would really make no matter given the grade. Is that what I'm to understand?
Well, again, you'd even if we halved the footprint of the Lot 3 building and doubled its height, we'd still have a problem sort of fitting it all on and getting the parking to work, I think, is really what it boils down to.
As far as parking goes, it is a touchy subject, as you've heard from another council member, and you are going to have some constraints down there. And I would anticipate, I will be watching the next round very carefully as far as the parking numbers go. I guess that's just a bit of a statement. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. The rental units, I like that, and I would appreciate some certainty for the community if you can come back with something like that. And also, it really irks me or drives me nuts to try and gain an understanding of the impact on a community simply by FAR. So if you, again, come back with some kind of configuration, you know, a 2-bedroom suite can facilitate 2 working adults that have 2 cars that impact your parking, the whole works, you know. Or if it's 100 studios, well, then, you know, that's a different animal. So I would love some certainty on that breakdown. That's it. I like a lot of what I see here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. His Worship, Mayor Martin.
Thank you. I'm prepared to move the right staff recommendation. And unless you wish to have continued discussions, nope. But I'm looking for direction from staff in regards to the community amenity contribution. Are you looking for direction tonight on that?
Yasmin?
Yes, I would like some direction so I can draft the amending bylaws and bring them forward for council to consider at the March 14th. And then at the next meeting of council, I can have these bylaws prepared for you to have more concrete understanding of number of units and a few more details.
Okay, so I will be moving the staff recommendation with that we also follow the current council policy in regards to the community amenity contributions.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I got cut off before I had finished my questions.
I didn't realize that you were first off the hopper, Councillor Day, and you didn't indicate that you had more questions. We went through 4 or 5 other
Yeah,
speakers.
well, I was trying to be polite. I put my hand back up.
Okay.
I
Okay, on the, do you want to make a comment on the motion, Councillor Day?
No, I wanted to ask staff a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So in your report, figures 1 and 2 both do not describe the area very well. Perhaps it's historical because figure 1 is from back in 2002 and Veterans Memorial Parkway is labeled as Millstream. In figure 2, Veterans Memorial Parkway is completely unnamed and it's cut off from the map. So I'm just asking for future reports to please have a context for any figures that you put in there that people can understand where it is in terms of today's maps. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. De Zwager, I do see your hand up. However, we do have a motion on the floor. So we're going to stick with discussion on the motion right now amongst the committee, but thank you. So Mayor Martin does have a motion on the floor with that one amendment. Any further discussion? Councillor Kobayashi?
Thank you very much, Chair. I would also, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring this up, Mr. Chair, but I'd like to see rideshare considered for this facility if it's going to be an apartment for 10 years. I mean, it's working successfully in other municipalities. So if this is the appropriate place to make that amendment, for the developer to look at rideshare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. Aspen, I seek your guidance in terms of the appropriateness and timing of this. Would you recommend a motion at this time to incorporate something like that?
To date, we have not discussed the parking element yet, but I think it is a time for council to reflect on, committee to reflect on the elements that they would like to see brought forward through these developments. So yes, if we have that direction, we'll continue to work with the applicant and integrate it as part of the considerations for development permit. And yeah.
That's great. So, and I see the applicant is in favor of rideshare. So Councillor Kobayashi, let's make this official, eh? And
okay, I will. Thank you. Yep.
That will be an amendment to the main motion. So and that is to add rideshare. Discussion on the amendment, please. Councillor Baxter, did you want to discuss the amendment or the main motion?
The amendment.
Okay, on the amendment, Michael?
So there are many things that could be read into the requirement for rideshare, including purchase of a vehicle, etc. So just a question for staff: do you need any detail at this stage as to what we mean by rideshare? In other words, what that means in terms of what the developer has to provide?
If it's okay with committee, we can come back, we can let the applicant come back to council and outline what their proposal is and how they see it fit, what framework they want to use to establish it and what they think would be more suitable for this site. And then once you are presented with that proposal, you can potentially guide the applicant further. But I think at this point, it may be wise to give the applicant an opportunity to go back and speak to their consultants.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Day on the amendment.
Yes, I'd like to add art to the amendment because I also saw that Mr. Deswager said yes to that as well. To the art on the side of the building.
Okay, making things interesting here. Okay, an amendment to the amendment. Love this. Okay, any discussion to the amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, and those that are opposed to the amendment Seeing none, it passes. On the amendment, that includes the art installation now. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. No, okay. Those opposed to the amendment? Seeing none opposed. On the main motion with all those amendments, any further discussion? Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually trying to catch you before we called the amendment.
Sorry, I thought you were waving your hand off.
No, that's right. I guess I'm just wanting to make sure that we have not gone beyond what we've been asked for. And it was my understanding we're talking about land use designation and the appropriate amendments to the land use bylaw. And are the amendments appropriate to the land use bylaw?
Yasmin?
I guess the motion or the recommendation that is in the report implied that it implied that council wanted to proceed with this rezoning without a development agreement or without adding additional conditions imposed on these rezoning, because these properties are already abiding by a development agreement from 2002 that imposes specific conditions that were more specifically tied to environmental considerations. So we have, through the development permit process that enabled the subdivision, to date, the applicant has met those development agreement conditions from 2002. So the assumption in the staff report is that we were satisfied that the environmental conditions have been met. But what I'm hearing from tonight's conversation is that there are some other elements that council would like to secure or consider securing as conditions of rezoning. So it is, if there is an interest to secure elements that are not part of our bylaw, it is through the rezoning process and the development agreement that we can establish those conversations with the applicant. So yes, if there is direction from council on very specific items that would like to be considered as conditions of rezoning, this is the appropriate time to highlight for staff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day on the motion.
Thank you. Just hearing the planner's response to the amendments, I'm just curious, because we are talking about the conditions that were imposed in 2002, are we understanding and okay with that this is not a 2002 proposal. This is a 2022 proposal. And so we have said that the amenity, the contributions are going to be 2022 contributions. Is that what, am I understanding that correctly?
Yasmin?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I didn't mean to imply that we're not progressing these from the ask of 2002. It's just that I can read the minds of council. It is this is the time when it becomes clear what you would like to prioritize and how you would like to see features enhanced as you see an application come forward.
Okay, so I'm just going to say I'm doing my very best to make this the best proposal that we can put forward at this time. But I do feel that there are significant negative impacts on the most immediate neighbor, which is Heron's Landing, by this building, and I haven't seen anything that mitigates those impacts yet. I do find it difficult to support this proposal because I don't think you would like the lady in the tall hat to sit in front of you at the theater. And I don't think you would like the tall apartment building built next to your home either.
Thanks, Councillor Day. With that, not seeing any more hands, I will call the question. Those that are opposed to the motion as amended, and one opposed, then that's Councillor Day. So the motion passes. Thank you. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Yasmin. So we will go on to item 5.3, OCP zoning amendment application 620 Medalist Avenue. Yasmin, you're busy tonight.
Yes, so I'm going to share my screen. Just a second. Just bear with me a minute. I just need to open up my presentation.
I can pull it up for you, Yasmin, if you'd like.
I think I have it. Let's see. There. Can you see my screen?
We can. Thank you, Aspen.
And I'll be brief because a lot of the context of these other application on Olympic View is very similar and the same as the previous application. So I will try to be quite brief. The context, this is right across the street from the application that we just reviewed. So the the southwest corner of La Toria and Veterans Memorial Parkway. Along the entrance of these properties along Medalist Way. The proposed concept plan is for a 5-story building, 34 condominium units. You can see there's extensive environmental setbacks that were secured under the development permit. So this effectively creates almost like a panhandle lot. So it's an access that is limited because there's a retention of a lot of the trees and the green space along Medalist Way that provides a good buffer from the single family lots that are to the west. Yeah, to the west of these developments. So up on the screen would be west. The renderings, the aesthetic of the buildings and a lot of the principles that were discussed for the other building will be also integrated into this building, maybe for some context regarding the height of the buildings. So we have a proposal, development permit across the street on 594 La Toria for an 8-story building. And these buildings will match that height in terms of a geodetic point. So the point on the sky where they will sit, it will be at a similar geodetic height. And if we look at the land use bylaw, the parameters that we are putting forward for council to consider, the height of this 5-story building is 17 meters from average existing grade, and the height of the building on Olympian Way was 24 meters. So it's not a measurement of how high it is when standing on La Toria Road, because of course there's that rock formation, but it is in terms of average existing grade on the property. So it's definitely not 50 meters, but that's just some additional context. Much like the review of the official community plan and the policies that support apartment dwellings, at this location. It is a location for intended growth with support for BC's rapid and frequent transit network based on our OCP policy 8.2.4.2. Then the OCP amendment, just speaking to that, apartment buildings on the site. And similarly, the amendment would just be to integrate the writing and the policies in the neighborhood center designation, allowing for some specific statements regarding the Olympic View local area plan and this entrance to that new emerging neighborhood, and how we would like to see a prominent and distinctive landmark building, and with a specific focus on the retention of natural features, sensitive ecological areas, and setting the stage for this emerging neighborhood in Olympic View. The community contributions, once again, we've discussed that. The communication, we've proceeded just as our land use procedure bylaw requires us, communicated via a posted sign. We have also made the proposal available on the website. The staff recommendation is to proceed forward with the preparation of the bylaws. There's also alternative options for council to consider, like deferring the application for further information or denying the application. And now I'll just turn it over to Chris for a presentation on more the specifics of from the applicant side.
Thank you, Yasmin. Chris, over to you for part two.
Thank you, Chair, and Yasmin, for the introduction. Okay, Jan's got the slides up. Very good. We'll be brisk on this one because the design principles are entirely the same. We'll try to just highlight a few of the differences, if any. Next. So you will have seen the first four slides before. There it is in context again. As we go, keep going, Jan. There it is in the neighborhood center. There's the topography. You can see it's a little higher on lot 3, particularly as you get into the buildable part of the site to the southwest of the corner. Next. And another view of the lot. Next. And there are the encumbrances. The green are the environmentally sensitive areas. The blue are the various setbacks. And the yellow is this funny shape that we have left over. Next. So the building has a kink, partly to echo its counterpart across the street, but also to get the main part, taller part of the building into the widest part of the site and align its southern terraced piece with the panhandle that connects to Medalist. All my comments about the green roofs and things, I think, will apply. Yeah, you carry on, Jan, next slide. The section shows that the building, it's technically a 5-story building, but it's really a 4-story building on top of another single parking level that's partly exposed to the north and partly dug in at the south. You can sort of see in this slide on the left-hand side, there's a kind of a line through the trees that shows the contour as you move south. So you can see how the site drops slightly to the north. Next. And there we have the 4 terraced stories. And again, a veil of trees along the lot edge to the north, the east, and the west. Next. And same kind of diagrams. Carry on, Jan. We can probably move through these pretty quickly. Next. Again, it's our intent that the majority of the site remain in a natural state rather than a cultivated state. Hence the proposal for some outdoor rooftop areas. Next. Yeah, same sort of, again, let's keep the cars out of sight, keep the blasting and the flat asphalt areas out of sight, and get them all into the building. And that's really what's driving the height, just as it did with lot 35. Next. I guess this would be interesting, even more interesting, if we compared it to all of the buildings with the same sort of geodetic height. I think that'll be quite interesting to have at least 3 of the 4 corners sort of matching up. It'll really make that that node significant. Next. And just some of the massing and the scale of trees next to it. Next. That's a view from across Latoria, from the property across Latoria to the northwest. And from Medalist, looking back, the little gray mass on the right behind the trees is just some conjecture about those sites are designated for some large duplex buildings. And then as we move to the west along Medalist, it goes back to single family. But there's that, if you remember the site plan, there's a rather large landscape buffer to the west of this property. Next. There's the basic data, 34 units. I think that's more or less triple what the site could do with townhouses, with probably about the same disruption of landscape. Relatively low density. And is that it? I think that's the end of our presentation, and happy to take the questions now, if there are any.
Great. A great teamwork, Chris and Jan, and we'll open it up to committee. I don't see any hands up. Looking for a motion though. Councillor Parkinson. Oh, you're
Older Michael.
I was gonna say, yeah.
I'd be happy to move the recommendation with the same amendment as we had on the previous motion.
Okay, including the community amenity charge and ride share and art.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, please. I don't know, well, arts we could debate, I suppose, but we'll leave it in there for now.
We'll leave it in. Okay. On the motion. Seeing no discussion. So we've got a motion on the floor. Thanks, Peter. Sorry, too late. Seeing no further discussion. Those that are opposed? One opposed, Councillor Day. The motion passes. All right, so we will go to item 5.4, a report on the rezoning amendment application 2353 and 2361 Souk Road. Yasmin.
So I'll just share my screen once more. The final time for tonight. So this is a brief presentation on a rezoning application for the properties at 2353 and 2361 Souk Road. These properties are located on the southeast corner of Veterans Memorial Parkway and Souk Road. They together comprise an irregular shaped lot, to say the least. The applicant is proposing a gas station, a car wash, and 700 square meters of commercial space that would be framing or aligning along Souk Road and with a small commercial unit element along Veterans Memorial Parkway. The The uses being sought for this property, as I said, is a car wash, gas station, some retail to enable the function of those commercial units, personal services, a restaurant, and one caretaker unit that would be located on the second story of the car wash office building at the rear of the property, closer to Wildcat. The review of the official community plan. So this is designated, the location is designated within the mixed use employment center land use designation, which has a preference for the Allendale district to focus as an employment generating and as an industrial, as a hub for industrial activity in Colwood, commercial industrial activity. There is support in the policy for these commercial light industrial use. Perhaps one of the policy requirements is avoiding disturbances to adjacent residential neighborhoods, particularly for the Allendale lands, by managing the scale, intensity, and types of industrial and commercial activities. So regarding there are only 2 single-family homes in the entire Allendale lands, and this property will surround these 2 single-family homes. They are existing, but they are not. So the mixed-use employment center designation does not accommodate single-family as a use within these lands. That said, the applicant is proposing to install a landscape lattice and some sound buffering on the car wash building, as it's adjacent to the 2 existing single-family homes. So some efforts have been placed to accommodate, but as I said, the mixed-use employment center is not a use that is supported, and that over time, we would hope to see the single-family home transition into a different use that is more compatible with the adjacent land uses that we're seeing in the Allendale district. Perhaps one of the biggest gaps in the mixed-use employment center land use designation is there are no properties designated as gateways, or potentially there is no design guidelines that speak to a gateway feature, but we consider these properties on the corner of Veterans Memorial Parkway and Sioux Grove, both to the east and west, the gateways to this industrial emerging district. And staff are proposing that if council is supportive of this application, that the staff recommendation includes a specific design guidelines to try and guide this development towards achieving more of a gateway feature on this corner. The communication that we have followed is, as previously discussed, in keeping with the procedure by law and the Local Government Act. The rezoning process, so this is the first application that comes to council where the recent changes to the Local Government Act could be implemented. So as of the end of February, the changes to the Local Government Act became binding or apply. And so last year, the Local Government Act was amended to make a way or remove the requirement for a public hearing in cases where a rezoning meets the official community plan land use designation of the lands. So the default in the Local Government Act is now not to hold the rezoning. It's no longer required if the lands meet, if the proposal meets the official community plan intent. That said, while the legislation removed the requirement for a public hearing, it imposed a new requirement, which is that we will be required to, if we do not host a public hearing, and adhere to the Local Government Act as it stands today, we will need to notify neighbors and give public notification prior to first reading. So we would effectively be inviting public comment and submission at first reading, as opposed to having and hosting a public hearing that would come between second and third reading. So that is a couple of options if council wishes to support and proceed with this application. The staff recommendation is consistent with the new Local Government Act, so it is not requiring a public hearing, but if council wishes to add a public hearing and continue with our normal public hearing requirement, then option number 2 in the staff report allows you to proceed with that intent, the status quo. And that's everything on my part, but the applicants are here tonight, and they also are prepared to make a presentation to outline their proposal to committee. I see some hands up, and I'll just refer back to the chair and
yes, thank you. I will, before I recognize committee, I will go to the applicant who wishes to make a brief presentation.
Thank you very much. And to Mayor Martin and Council, thank you very much for your invite today. And we'd like to go ahead and present a few minutes to go ahead and explain our scheme. So I'm just going to go ahead. Oh, my name is Joe Minton, by the way. I'm the principal of JM Architecture. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. So hopefully I do that correctly. Oops. Back one. Can everyone see my screen?
We can. Thanks, Joe.
Okay. So thank you again. I'd like to introduce, if I can, the team members that I have with me, and if they could just briefly turn on their audio, or sorry, their video, then you could see them. So Raj Admi, and I cannot see you, so I don't know if you've done that.
We won't, well, because you're sharing your screen, we probably won't be able to see them.
Oh, is that right? Okay,
Yeah,
I apologize. Oh, well, then I'll just list them then if you don't mind. So sure. Raj Admi is our owner and developer of the property. Terence Barabash is a representative of 7-Eleven. And then I'm the principal of JM Architecture, and Alan Marcotte, who's with us, is also with JM Architecture, and he's a project designer. So I'd like to present to you actually the Speedwash Energy Center, which is located at the intersection of, can you also see my mouse bouncing around, just by the way?
Yeah, you betcha.
Oh, perfect, yeah. Great, okay, good. Well, the orange area here, as Yasmin said, is the rather odd-shaped lot that we have to put our proposal on at the intersection of Souk Road and Veteran Memorial Parkway. You'll see a bunch of little icons coming up periodically just to highlight what I'm talking about. So if I get mixed up, maybe you won't. The blue area that in terms of our site context is all the area surrounding our property that is designated in the OCP as Mixed Employment Center. So that's all of these areas here, a Wildcat Business Park, car dealership, a C-SPAN site, a mini storage site, and a comprehensive neighborhood development. Across the road, we have 2 residential areas of multifamily residential that are proposed across the street here and 1 here. And our understanding is that in the future, the area to the northwest would also be designated as multi-residential. These are important aspects to our site because we're trying to make this as much a pedestrian-oriented site as possible, even though in principle it's probably more a vehicular-oriented site. But you'll see shortly that, in fact, we're trying to do the best we can to make that a pedestrian-oriented. The current zone for this site is residential, and as Yasmin stated, we're going to a, oops, how do I get rid of that? Can I? Can anyone help me tell me that I can get rid of this? Hide thumbnails. There we go. Okay, I won't see you, but you'll have to listen to me.
There you go.
Okay, but I need that next slide.
Oh.
Sorry, I have somebody talking in behind me here too. So the site is zoned as a comprehensive development zone. We're seeking an approval to a density of 1.0. We're well below that at present at 0.3. Our maximum height to the building is 10 meters, a maximum story height of 2 stories. We're fronting onto the front street front at 3 meters, at the rear yard at 10 meters, interior side at 0.5, and at the exterior side yard at 3 meters. Our proposed lot coverage approval is seeking 70%. Again, we're using quite below that, just around 40% or just 35%. And our off-street parking currently is meeting the zoning bylaw requirements for the type of uses proposed. The blue zone that you're seeing on the site right now is the right-of-way lands that cut through our property. Our property is coming right in through here, up along and through this portion here, and if you follow my mouse, the long portion in the back here. The proposed future development is just those 2 single-family lots that were mentioned very early in the meeting. So we propose an automotive access area as defined by the red arrows that you see, a right-in only off of Veteran Memorial Parkway, and as you skirt up along and into Souk Road, a right-in and right-out access from the north property here, and then 2 full service access points, one on the south from Wildcat Road and another at the north end of Wildcat Road. And pedestrian access we have along Veterans Memorial Way at the south end of the site here, through the right-of-way areas here, and through a couple of our courtyard areas that we created on the site at this point, and at the north end just next to the vehicular access off of Souk Road. The proposed land uses that we have are well within keeping of the mixed-use employment center. We are proposing our car wash building to the south portion of the long property. That would provide access for vehicles coming off of Wildcat Road. At this point here, cars would move into the site. If they were not going to the car wash, they would extend into the area to the north of it and then go into the convenience store and ancillary CRU areas here. Or they're coming along, going into the queuing area for the car wash, moving to the north, looping around to the south, going southward along the in the wash tunnel itself, coming out of the site, and then going either left or right to either Veterans Memorial Parkway or back into the site to go ahead and utilize the other areas of the site. Our 7-Eleven store is at the north end of the site. This is a rather unique 7-Eleven store. It's called the Evolution Store. This is a development that 7-Eleven is creating in combination with other food and beverage opportunities and dining to the store. These are elements that 7-Eleven is trying to expand within it, and this would actually be one of the very first outlets in Canada should you accept it. And I think that it's a pretty exciting kind of pedestrian-oriented and expanded convenience store provision. So at one time we actually had the outdoor seating area for the 7-Eleven at the east end of the property, and we were advised very early on, or just recently actually, that's the wrong location for it, given the proximity to the fueling station. So we're now bringing it over to the west end of the site and into the plaza area that you see here. There are 2 other retail outlets here and another one here, but of course we do have some electric vehicle stations that I've mentioned right over here where the blue stars are. So there's several here along in the north end of the car wash and to the south end in combination with some vacuum stations. The pump area, you might call it, currently might be considered a gas station. We actually want to see that more considered as a combination of fueling and electric stations, because we anticipate that in the future there will be more use to electric vehicles than there will gasoline. And so these are a transitional kind of element, something that 7-Eleven and their partner Petrocan are very keen to go ahead and present. And finally, the last land use proposal is for commercial development, which are the yellow stars that you see here. In terms of the OCP objectives that we've tried to meet in total, the use of natural landscaping, the site is quite well treed at the moment, and clearly as the development occurs there'll be less of those trees, but we'll keep as many of them as we can, and we'll supplement them with new trees and shrubbery in the various landscaped areas that you see. We have oriented the buildings as close to the street front as possible and supplemented it with further architectural treatment to try and create a very strong street edge that you can follow along with my mouse movement here. There's a 3-meter setback of landscaping that you see fronting those buildings, and then onto the public sidewalk. Access from the street through these plaza areas will take you onto access points to the 7-Eleven Evolution store, both at the east and west end, through to the public plaza that's coming through the right-of-way into the other CRUs and into the last CRU at this end. Again, the 3-meter setback requirement is part of the MOTI requirements that skirt the entire front end of the site. The 3 or 4 plazas that you see are created here to go ahead and penetrate the site both visually and provide pedestrian access. And the OCP asks us to limit the length of the building to 40 meters. We've done that in all cases and much less than that. So partly the plaza areas that you see cutting into the buildings create that lesser storefront that you would normally get. Again, access for the buildings, as you see here, punctuated by the landscape areas and secure parking for bicycles here and here. And each of the entryways will have a covered canopy protecting the pedestrians going into the units. We've provided all of the areas around vehicle parking with curbs and gutters and landscaped areas so that they've been clearly defined and separated from the built areas. Secure bike storage in here, and we're looking at the possibility of putting electrified bike storage in here as well for people that are driving electric bikes these days. Parking areas and pathways. So we've provided pathways from the car wash building itself through the convenience store, along the storefront or along the parking frontages, and into the stores in those either plaza areas or direct from the parking area. The OCP requires that we provide delineated parking spots and provide a permeable surface for them, and that's what we'll do with these areas and through here. Unlikely that we can do it here where we're putting underground stations, but then we can do permeable paving over here and back into this area here as well. Again, the use of courtyards to go ahead and bring those passageways back into the site, and our streetscapes and public areas, which will have benches and different amenities within them, as well as waste and recycling areas. So the long and short of it is we feel that we've met most or if not all of the OCP requirements within the portion of the site. We've used as much natural ventilation and supplemented it with landscaping and public areas. We've oriented the buildings to the street, providing both street front and access from the street into the site. By including landscaping along the street edge, we've created a buffer between the pedestrian walkways, the landscaping, and the buildings themselves. We've given access, visual access through the courtyard areas. We've provided safe and secure parking to bicycle storage into these areas and electrified them. Instead of having very large areas of parking, we've provided parking in pods, allowing it to be landscaped in between. Oops, sorry. We've of course delineated the parking spots and provided them, or will be providing them, with permeable paving. And for all of the open areas, we'll create a habitable bench and pedestrian-oriented kind of plaza for each of these open areas. The waste and recycling we have as inboard or in-ground services for the retail components here at the south end, and for the car wash at the far end over here. Of course, the entire site, where it isn't a hard landscape and building, will be professionally landscaped. And that is all I can tell you about the site right now. And I'll leave it to Yasmin to pick it up and to answer any questions from there.
Thank you, Joe. So I will go to committee. We've got Councillors Day, Jansen, and Baxter. Councillor Day, and Joe, wondering if we can take down your presentation, please.
How do I go about doing that?
Just like that. That's perfect. Thank you. Oh. Councillor Day, go for it.
Thank you. So I have some concerns in that this new public hearing process, it kind of takes, I think, everyone by surprise, and the fact that there are 2 residences that are being surrounded, that kind of bothers me. And it also bothers me that the presentation tonight did not show a map of the trees that are currently existing that they're trying to fit in with. Instead, it's showing me what you want to create based on the boundaries of the land that you have available, without any. So that just tells me that the natural vegetation that exists there today hasn't been valued. And for me, that's a problem. I know we have to try to work with what we got, but I was really hoping that we would see something come forward that values the natural topography that's there right now. We have low but intensively transportation-oriented business coming here. And I'm wondering if there's been any evaluation done as to how many employees this would support.
Should I answer some of that or not?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. In terms of seeking local support, we have actually gone out and looked at or asked neighboring landowners to go ahead and provide some support, and we provided those letters through to Amanda, I think it was, at the City of Colwood, and you're more than welcome to get those from her. I think there was just in the last day or two, maybe half a dozen or so of those support letters coming to you, and if that helps in terms of public hearing and public input, I'd want to bring that to your attention now. I think that's all for that.
Trees?
Trees. I don't actually have a full tree inventory of this site, and of course we'll keep as many trees as we possibly can. There is a requirement, of course, for good, safe vehicular movement through the site, and we'd want to marry both of those up and get to as much natural ventilation or vegetation as possible. So definitely we will look at it and agree we'll need to give you more information in the next iteration of it.
Okay, and how many employees do you anticipate?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I could leave that to maybe Raj or Terry to answer that if they can answer you.
I see Mr. Panu has started his video, so perhaps he might have an answer.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jay Panu. I'm actually a commercial real estate broker, and I advise on with Raj and Terry there. So we did have some outreach to the local adjacent owners, Omicron, Carson Group, Sheringham, Paul Atwall across the street, and Logic Homes. So there was support letters from all those groups supporting this project. There's some commentary from you guys on the residential houses. So we did reach out to both those residential houses. We did offer commercial land use offers to both lots. We had no counter responses back from those groups. So the developer has shown interest to acquire both parcels. However, typically as a real estate transaction works, you want to get some counters back from groups so we can proceed. And I can pass it back on to Terry or Raj on I think the other question was regarding employees.
Yeah, hi, it's Terry Collins, 711.
Sorry, I think that's Terry, but you're breaking up badly.
Sorry, I don't put my video on. Can you hear me now?
That's better. Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, I won't put my video on because it'll get even worse. So 24-hour operation 7-Eleven is, so we probably have between 20 and 30 people employed. That's a guesstimate. I'm real estate, that's the operation side, so I would get some more concrete numbers along the way, but I would estimate probably for operation would be 20 to 30 people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Day?
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillors Jansen and then Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, is this commentary or questions only at this point?
You can ask some questions, and if you want a little bit of commentary, make a motion.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I heard Jay there say that they offered that those lands are zoned residential. So do we offer residential rates on that, or do we offer commercial rates, which I'm assuming there's a discrepancy? I mean, clearly this is the interest here. That's a question. Maybe you can answer that, Bart.
Yeah, definitely. We did look at those. Ultimately, those would form part of the development. So you look as a developer, you look at that as on a commercial acquisition, on a land comp, and the offers we provided were above assessed value, and there was no formal response back. So the developer was definitely open to having that conversation via email, call, and signed offers, and there's no communication back in terms of price for the developer to pay. So we've made the outreach to them, and there was really there's no sense in any common ground on coming to terms.
Okay, so thank you for that, Mr. Chair. Just a few comments. I have concerns about us inhibiting future development for those two residential lots. I far prefer to see this corner rezoned as a bundle and in concert with each other, as opposed to sort of a hodgepodge. And I think the result is the community gets left with some kind of lame duck property coming off Wildcat Way there, whereas we could find something more comprehensive for the entire corner. This is an entrance to our community from the other end. I mean, we're welcoming people to the Allendale district here. The Allendale district is our key commercial / industrial lands, and this having a gas station on the corner, I have some problems with that. I have some problems with the lack of site adaptive planning along the lines of what Councillor Day has. That there are large mature fir trees on that property, and I believe the community has an interest in trying to preserve as many as possible. The awkwardness of this lot, I commend you for being creative and coming up with some ideas for the corner there. But I struggle with the access, the egress. I struggle with locking down potentially those couple of properties off the end of Wildcat. I struggle with the lack of site adaptive kind of focus on this, and this doesn't fit with my vision for that corner, and that's just a me thing, and I'm going to be somewhat hypocritical because I've filled up at Petro-Canada. And I've had lots of nachos and cheese sauce from 7-Eleven over the years. So, but my preference would be, and I have nothing against those particular businesses, but if some kind of swanky mixed use development for the corner, including those operations and some residences above and some trails going through the property. I mean, I'm no architect. I have an arts degree, which I say many times publicly. So, Mr. Chair, I'm opposed to this as it sits right now before me, and you can maybe come back to me for a motion if one is needed after my peers get a chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nacho Man Jensen. We'll go to Councillor Baxter.
I would caution council against getting involved in the property negotiations with those two houses. If council were to turn down the development on the basis that those two properties have not been included, then you've basically handed those two property owners a license to write their own check. And that is getting involved in the property negotiation. So my decision will have nothing to do with whether or not those two properties are included. My main question revolves around the electric chargers. The staff report called them fast charging stations, which normally would be level 3s, where you could charge in 20 to 40 minutes and get a useful amount of charge. But the staff report also says they're level 2 level 2 chargers, which would be sort of 4 to 8 hours to charge, which doesn't seem to fit with the purpose of this land, which is, kind of a gas and EV station combined. So perhaps the proponent can tell us what level these chargers are.
Hi, Councillor Baxter. It's Terry here, 7-Eleven. I think on our side, the EV component is evolving. We just have a whole new team, and it's just announced here last week. The level of charging and all that, we'd have to go to 7-Eleven. I'm sure they'd want to do whatever's right for the community. So I wouldn't be able to address it specifically now, but I could get more information on that, and I'm sure that they would for sure support a faster charging unit there if that's really what the community demanded.
Yeah, I've been an EV driver for more than 10 years, and I think to make this useful, out of 6 chargers, you probably want 4 level 3s, and if you like, 2 level 2s, which are kind of would be holding places for those waiting for the level 3s. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. But otherwise, I recognize that this is a very strange piece of property, and I think the proponent has done an amazing job of making good use of this very strange piece of property. And it's an unfortunate thing about development and planning that the planners don't get to create the property lines, because if they did, they'd look a lot better than that. The property lines are what they are, and the developers have to come up with some way of making use of them if they can't, put them together in large enough pieces. And certainly took my electric bike, and thank you for the electric bike charging in there, and rode around the site, and it's a mess, and I'd be really happy to see it developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, thank you. Just carrying on from the last couple of councillors' comments, I agree with Councillor Baxter. We don't want to get involved in any property negotiations on the existing homes, but presumably we're involved in property negotiations on the Wildcat right-of-way. It looks like they're incorporating part of that into the site. Has there been discussions about that, Yasmin?
No. So I'm not sure what their site plan shows, but Wildcat is a road right away, and we are not. No, there are no contemplation or negotiation to accommodate buildings on the road. I think there has been some conversation about accommodating on-street parking where possible along Wildcat. Because there will be no on-street parking on VMP or Souk Road. So the conversation, the extent of the use of Wildcat has been to try and accommodate on-street parking where possible. But the road will be road.
Well, what I see on these plans is that Wildcat right-of-way extends through to VMP, and that the CRUs are sort of on either side of the right-of-way. Am I reading that wrong?
And I see Mr. Minton's hands up as well. Maybe you can provide some additional perspective as well.
Yes, Councillor Parkinson, that is exactly correct. There's a huge right-of-way that extends from Wildcat right through to the main street, and it's a huge encumbrance on the site. The best that we can do on that property is to provide parking in some plaza area for pedestrian access. And so we've tried to create a kind of an architectural feature along the edge of the property that will maintain a continuous line of building and architectural features to create that frontage, knowing full well that we really can't put a building there.
And maybe can I add, this is a hydro. This is a BC hydro right away. So it's not a road right away, it's a BC hydro right away, the one that cuts through, yeah, I'm sorry. And now that I'm clear on what right away we're talking about, there is a large statutory right away by BC Hydro. So it's not the cities, it's a utility company that has the rights over that land.
So Wildcat Lane ends just before it hits this site.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing to follow up on, and Councillor Jansen called it awkward. I got to admit, my sense when I first looked at this was trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole. I mean, it's really, I tried to picture traffic movements, coming off VMP to get to the car wash. Looks like you'd come out and go down Wildcat and into line up and then go through the car wash. And then if you wanted to head back, you got a very awkward intersection, looks like with a funny angle. It looks really awkward to me and problematic. I got to admit, it's going to be the kind of place where you have to really be on your toes and watch different vehicle movements to get in and out safely. So there's that. There's the discussions that we had quite extensively previously at the Latoria and VMP intersection, and the gateway to the Olympic View development, and how would it look and what would it look like. And so I look at the visuals for this, and I got to admit they're sort of, I would use the term futuristic, although I don't consider myself any kind of an architectural. I have no skills to make me worthy of commenting on architecture, except I guess that's part of my role. But I also think that a gas station and a 7-Eleven and whatever these CRUs are going to be prone to want to market their products and advertise their existence. And so we could be looking at that intersection with a whole bunch of signage that, if it's not done very well, could be downright ugly. I mean, it goes anywhere from ugly to, if it's done well, to okay. I share Councillor Jansen's concern that this probably isn't the right place for this project. I see they worked hard to create it, but it's, I guess I'm going to stick with Dean's word, awkward. So yeah, I'm afraid I don't think this is the right project in the right place for our community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. Mayor Martin.
I very much respect the opinions of Councillor Baxter and Councillor Parkinson, but I struggle with not considering the two homes when I'm looking at this, and I struggle that there's a resident right now who lives there, who's living in an R1 area, and that we're talking about putting a car wash basically right where he's at, and that concerns me, and I have a real difficulty making that decision at the present time, and I'm struggling with that, and I'm not sure where I sit with that. I very much believe in private land ownership rights, and so as much as what I've heard also from Councillor Jansen and Councillor Parkinson, I'm not thrilled with the gas station. I'll be honest with you. I would have liked to have seen something more there. I think there's a huge potential there, but as I said, I do believe that people have a right to make those choices. But I'm struggling with specifically the car wash and the residents who are presently living there. And perhaps staff could comment on that. How would we anticipate that car wash interacting with those two residential homes?
Aspen, you want to tackle that, baby?
I think it is a very difficult adjacency to manage, and it is a difficult place for I would say for the OCP does not support the existence of those single family homes. I think ultimately the official community plan calls for those lands to be reimagined into something else that is more in keeping with the Allendale district. So over time, we would like to see, that the vision for Allendale is to see no single family home in that location. So to answer your question, I don't think the policy wouldn't put the accommodation of the single family homes ahead of advancing the reimagining of this corner in a way that it aligns with the mixed use employment center. But these are the difficult questions that council has to grapple, and I know it's not easy. Sorry, not an easy answer for me or yourselves. Sorry.
I see Mr. Penu has his hand up. Perhaps he wants to offer a bit of perspective.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add, I know there was some commentary from some councillors regarding some additional density to the residential. I know the Omicron folks in behind, they have a 31 unit industrial strata project. I don't know anybody that would want to live residential, have any sort of residential beside an industrial hub. You're going to have some light industrial users and heavy industrial users, tons of traffic going in and out of that corner there. That's through Omicron's development. So residential will be very, very tough to do on that corner. That corridor of Souk Road and Veterans Memorial is going to be, in my vision, is some sort of commercial development. And I think a lot of councillors did mention the developer's been very creative in his solution to develop that corner.
Thank you. Mayor Martin, did you have anything more to add? No, you're good. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think I'll pipe in now. So it's interesting to listen to people's perspectives. My only issue was the fairness to the resident. I still have heartache with that. I know what the OCP says, everyone. I do understand that. And I heard Councillor Baxter loud and clear. You're right. You're absolutely right. We can't sort of influence things, but you got to wear that person's shoes. And this is why I'm having difficulties with it. And unlike Councillor Jensen, I don't have an issue, you know, if it's a gas station, because it looks pretty space age, as Councillor Parkinson has said. But, you know, it's mixed use employment. So a gateway to what? We have a hodgepodge of a lot of things in Ellendale Pit. We never had a vision for it, and hence we got what we have. You know, a hodgepodge of businesses in there. So I don't have issue with it, but only heartache I have with this is those two residences in there. And this is why I'm struggling with this. I wish that was sort of resolved and it'd be a lot easier for me to vote on this, but that's, you know, being outstanding right now, it's very bothersome. And I just, you know, I'm struggling with this vote right now. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Mr. Minton, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just one comment on the architecture. Of course, the design that you're seeing is very, very preliminary in terms of the architecture, and it's almost more like a placeholder for the buildings than anything else. This is really a land use application. It's not a development permit application. So I just want to say that those buildings could easily change within the format and look of them.
Great, thank you. Before we get to Councillor Baxter as the second time speaker, I just want to maybe weigh in a little bit. And I just had a question. What kind of security do we take as a municipality to ensure a specific standard or upkeep for landscaping? And I tell you, my experience with gas stations and convenience stores like this is they look very nice when they're first planted, but then they go downhill very quickly because they're not maintained. There's only one gas station company that I can think of that sees value and invests in landscaping maintenance, but the rest don't. So how can we guarantee that kind of maintenance will continue into the future? And I'm not sure if, Yasmin, that's a fair question for you or to the applicant.
Yeah, there is no mechanism for us to compel people to maintain their property. I guess unsightly premise, then we have a bylaw that we act on for unsightly premises, but the maintenance of private property is a challenge. And compelling people to maintain, it's always difficult. Perhaps the applicant has more to add.
Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Minton.
What I would like to add is that this is really for 7-Eleven a new evolution store. It's a brand new type of store for them. It's not your typical convenience store at all. Yes, it has convenience aspects to it, added to that food and beverage and dining facility. I think that their corporate commitment would certainly want to be to keep it a tidy site.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. That's correct. The new evolution we're calling it is a very new concept for 7-Eleven, and there's only about 8 of them in the States right now. It incorporates all the newest offerings for 7-Eleven, including a restaurant style seating inside. So it kind of incorporates some of the stuff that the city, the Colwood, would like to see on site. So it is something that we actually take a lot of pride in. It's the first in Canada, and I believe that with the developer, we would maintain that landscaping to the highest level.
Okay, thank you. And I see, Raj, you have your hand up.
Your Worship, Honorable Council, yes, I'm the owner and the applicant of the project, and I'm just listening to everybody and taking everything into consideration, and especially the neighbors. That is something that we do definitely want to tie in together with our development. And last year when we did offer, we offered above market value in for our use, and I respect that what the residential values are. We really, love this whole corner. We've done our best trying to accommodate all the concerns that we possibly can, and we continue to. And yeah, in terms of the site landscaping and the features and all that stuff, the car wash that we're bringing also to the site, it is the future. We're very, very environmentally friendly. We're huge water conservation company. So we look for all those things to fit in with the community, and where there's a requirement, along with tying with the 7-Eleven brand, and really seeing our future with EV. And yes, some of the concerns were third, I guess level 3s and level 2s. I mean, ultimately, I want to see chargers on this site that charge in 5 minutes, not 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And my discussions as me being the owner with 7-Eleven and saying, listen, what's my exit strategy? Because I know gas is going out. And I don't want to have an empty gas station sitting there on this beautiful prime corner in 10 or 15 years. So, I've been working diligently with 7-Eleven Corporate and Terry and our team to, see how we're going to progress and evolve this store into a complete energy center. So yeah, just my input, and I respect everybody's comments, and we just want to, we want to beautify this corner as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just finish off by saying I appreciate the difficulty that staff and the applicants have had to try to make the best out of a difficult situation in terms of lot coverage and placement. But I will say that this project is going to be on this corner for decades to come, and it's a gateway not only to the Allendale district but to Souk Road, and which is being reimagined right now. And I too am struggling with the land use, frankly, because it's a signature corner, and I think Councillor Parkinson put it well. It's a good project in the wrong location, and I'm very much of the same mind, quite frankly, and I think we need to have a higher standard on that corner, frankly, and a different land use. So I'm having trouble with it, although I do appreciate the work that went into the design and trying to maximize the positive aspect of that corner, but it's a tricky one for me, to be honest with you. So with that, I'll go to second time speakers, Councillor Baxter and Day.
Okay, I just want to say to everybody who has any negative feelings about what's going on to this site, that that I'm not fond of gas stations. I'm not fond of anything this car oriented particularly. That's not my first choice, but if you just look at the square footage of those CRUs, and wander around the community and try and find what else would go there. What else would fit in those tiny little spaces? And you won't find much, maybe a coffee shop, but then the Evolution store is a coffee shop with other uses as well. So I find it really hard to imagine what else you're going to attract there. If you think about the car wash itself, it's set way back from Souk Road, and that's a problem for a lot of commercial businesses. They want frontage on the main road. Well, that has frontage on nothing. It's an awkward site in spades. I've never seen anything as bad as this to try and develop. Okay, that's my piece. I'll move the option 1, if that's appropriate.
Thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor, which is the option 1, which is the staff recommendation, I think, Michael?
Yeah, but the option without the public hearing.
The option without the public hearing. Okay. Thank you. On the motion, Councillor Day.
Thank you. My question is for staff. what regulations are there with the zoning as far as the 24-hour nature of the operation?
Aspen.
So at the moment, I mean, well, we haven't drafted the bylaw that would amend the zone, so we haven't considered adding any restrictions. Some of the zones that exist that are years, 10, 15 years within our land use bylaw do have restrictions as to a restaurant can only be open between these hours and those hours. So I suppose if council had a preference in terms of that, I would advise against imposing maybe a business model onto an applicant that is already proposing and being very straightforward as to what their business model requires, and it requires a 24/7 operation. So if that is a conflict or a challenge, I think it just may require more conversations with the applicant if council were considering to limit the hours of operation or impose additional noise restrictions or light restrictions onto that site at night, for instance.
Okay, thank you. So I will not be supporting this under its current format for several reasons, but one of my big ones is the 24-hour operation issue. When we looked at Latoria Walk, when its rezoning went in quite a long time ago now, that was a major concern for our council of the day, in that you know, Veterans Memorial Parkway attracts a lot of street racing, as does Latoria as well. And those issues seem to be worsened when there is the option of a 24-hour 7-Eleven or any other convenience store that's available. And I think it could be especially problematic with the industrial zoning because it does invite a crowd at certain times of the day, and that can be really difficult to manage. So I'm not seeing any of the things that I would have expected to see in a successful application, which would be consideration for the neighbors, consideration for the environment as it exists. And I think we can do better. And as difficult as this site is, I think we can, we could find a way. And I'd be happy to continue working with these applicants with refinements as we get a little further down the road to make something that could work. But really, for me, 24 hours is not on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Martin, on the motion.
Thank you. Can staff please comment? I'm still fuzzy on understanding about the two lots or the two residents that presently are there. Are they orphaned, or do they have access to getting in and out? I'm confused right now. So
no, so
post.
Yeah, so they have access. Both of those properties are access off of Wildcat Trail. So they come off of Wildcat Trail onto Allendale, and then they would go use the soon to exist traffic light at Allendale and VMP, and that would be their primary access. So they are orphan only in the sense that they are currently, as the Allendale lands sit, they are an island. They are the only two residential lots in the entire Allendale district. So they are orphaned in the sense that they are the only two developed lots that have developed into residential in lands that are industrial commercial.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I don't see any more hands up, so I will call the question on the motion, and that is the motion is option 1, which is the staff recommendation and no public hearing. So with that, those that are opposed to the motion, I see Councillor Parkinson, Jansen, Day, and Logan are opposed, so the motion fails. Okay, so with that, I think that's the only thing left on the agenda.
Move adjournment.
Thank you. Those that are opposed, none opposed. Have a good evening. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.